following during the moment of silence.
Somebody's echoing.
The family of Mr. Marvin L. Harris.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
Meeting's on the screen.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's okay, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We would like to remember the following during the moment of silence. The family of Mr. Marvin L. Harris, Petersburg City Public Schools employee, who passed away on Thursday, February 11, 2021. The family of Ms. Della F. Woodruff, former Petersburg City Public Schools long-term substitute teacher, who passed away on Tuesday, February 16, 2021, and the family of Ms. Carolyn T. Walker, former Petersburg City Public Schools employee, who passed away on Monday, March 1st, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Rios. At this time, we have a moment of silence. Thank you. Next, we'll move to our Pledge of Allegiance. We'll be led by who? Mr. Lundy. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, next we'll move to number 2, recognitions. Any recognitions tonight, Dr. Petrie Martin? I can't hear you. Are you on mute?
No, we do not have any recognitions. We will have a proclamation later in the meeting.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll move to number 3, approval of the consent agenda. A is our personnel agenda. B is our minutes from February the 3rd, 2021 meeting. And C, gifts received by Petersburg City Public Schools. Is there a motion to accept our consent agenda? Moved by Mr. Dance. Is there a second? Mr. Pierce, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now we'll come to number 4, superintendent and staff reports. Dr. Petrie Martin.
Good evening to everyone. And our first item under staff reports would be policies for first review. We have 2 policies that we are bringing to you. One is something we discussed during our last meeting, which happened to be the employee use of social networking. But then also this evening, in light of staff and students returning for in-person instruction, we have a new policy that we want to present this evening, and that is staff conduct and temporary restrictions due to COVID-19. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Good evening, Chair Pritchett, Vice Chair Pierce, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen.
On the screen.
As Dr. Petrie Martin shared, there are 2 new personnel items, GADA, which is the employee use of social networking sites, And this policy was presented for first review at our last meeting. We're leaving it
I
out
see it now.
for additional review. I have followed up on our policy email account, and to date, we have not received any questions, comments, or concerns. Again, the purpose of this new policy is to clarify employee roles, responsibilities, and expectations as they balance the personal use of social networking with their role as Petersburg City Public Schools employees. The second item is a regulation, and it's GBCB-R2, because we do have a regulation to our staff conduct policy. These are temporary restrictions, and this regulation was developed using information from the CDC and the governor's executive order. It outlines requirements for employees to comply with temperature monitoring, the wearing of face coverings, and practicing and following social distance guidelines. Those are the two personnel items before you this evening for first review.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Any questions from board members? Any questions on the two policies? Well, I'm sorry, one is a new policy and the other is a regulation. No questions. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Dr. Petrie Martin, we'll move to B.
Okay. And if I might make a comment regarding these two particular policies, we would be bringing this back for the board's approval on March 17th. I do want everyone to keep in mind that we have staff who are beginning to return back this week, as well as on March 15th. So I just want to make all staff who are aware on here that these are the types of things we would be asking them to do as they are in the building with us. So I just wanted to highlight that, Chair. Even though I know you guys will not approve this until March 17th, these are all the CDC requirements.
Martin and board members, if this is something that, can you go back? Mr. Corey, can you go back? If this is something that needs to be in place by tomorrow, then we need a motion to suspend the first read and take a vote.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
That is actually why I brought it up, because we have staff returning and this would need to be in place because this is the CDC guidance for working in the workplace.
Okay. And that is is that the regulation? Which one is? I can't.
It's the regulation, sir. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to vote on the regulation. Okay. Somebody had a question before he makes the you're going to make the motion. Who's going to make the motion?
But I had a question prior.
Go ahead.
This policy with a clear understanding of what has to happen with regards to protocol, and we're moving this to action. Will we make sure that all staff is very much aware of this, because this is we're removing the first read, so they need to be well aware of this first day. And I'm just asking, will we make sure that happens? Okay.
Yes, sir, we will. We actually have already put out some employee guidelines, but now if we had a policy or a regulation to go with it, we would send this out with it as well. But we have alluded to these in the employee guidelines that were shared last Friday. But having this regulation approved by the board would be very helpful.
Okay. I'm going to need a motion to suspend the first read, and I would say that we should go ahead and suspend the first read for both policies.
Absolutely.
Is there a motion to suspend the first read on both the policy and regulations presented?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Nguyen. Okay. Now they would need to be moved to action, and it would go under C. Who wants to make that motion?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Pierce. I'm sorry, go under, yes, it's C, and what is the number?
This will be
Number 6.
6C.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Chair, we'd like to move the policy for first review under the superintendent staff reports, item A, to action item C for action.
The policy and regulation.
Policy and regulation to action
Okay.
item C.
Okay. You've heard the, Mr. Pierce made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You got that, Ms. Barrios? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Petrie Martin, if you're ready for B.
The next item that we have here under staff reports happens to be an addendum to the Student Code of Conduct. As you know, the Student Code of Conduct was brought earlier this year, but now that we are bringing students back into the building for in-person instruction, we would like to add information to the Code of Conduct that is specific to protocols regarding COVID-19. So at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Pam Bell, and she will take us through several of these statements that we would like to put in an addendum.
Good evening, Chair Pritchett, Vice Chair Pierce, school board members, and Madam Superintendent. As Superintendent Dr. Petrie Martin mentioned, the Code of Conduct was approved in the fall of 2020. But in light of our transition to in-person learning for parents, we're presenting the addendum to reflect some of the additional responsibilities that are needed to ensure a smooth and safe transition. We've added sections for parents, which would be the first section that you see here, as well as for students, and ideally requesting their cooperation with proper mask wearing, temperature check compliance, transportation requirements, and social distancing. These additional responsibilities are essential to ensure the overall health and well-being of all of our students, as well as our staff. So we're also reemphasizing the importance of daily attendance, as you'll see towards the bottom, for both online and in-person learning, as well as the importance of requesting and completing missed assignments in a timely manner in the event of an absence. So all information that we do have presented on the addendum is in alignment with our current school board policies. And if you need me to go through anything specifically, please let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Any questions for Ms. Bell? Mr. Lundy, Ms. Lundy, I can't hear you.
Yes.
Bring your mic.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Miss Bell.
Yes, sir.
Hi, how you doing? Good evening.
I'm doing great.
I was just wondering, in our code of conduct, where we mention about masks and everything, what do we do with the protection of the faculty, staff, and students when we go through this dropping of the mask? It was something I hope we don't go into like we did with uniforms. We spent more time on that than anything.
So in regards to dropping of the mask, so right now—
When they're not, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, we're looking at several things. If you look here, we put the, if you look under the code of conduct, there's a section
right
that refers to safety concerns. So ideally, students and staff should wear a mask at all times, other than, of course, if they're eating, etc. So when we look at the code of conduct, you'll see under the area of safety, that's where there will be situations where admin or teachers will be able to address it according to the same procedures that they would for typical in-person learning and the code of conduct in general. So that's where that would be addressed. And of course, we just try to work with our students. We'll be contacting our parents. On secondary level, we have different tiers of supports, but it is a requirement for that. And so once we've worked with students, we've worked with parents, we've supported, had administration support, then, we just take the tiered steps as we would as outlined in the code.
Okay.
But it is a tiered approach. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Thank you, Ms. Bell. We appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Petrie Martin.
So this is also an item in which we could bring back for approval on March 17th. But again, we know that students will be starting school on March 17th. Also, our goal is to get letters home to every single family who has selected in-person instruction. So these types of documents would go in that packet that will be mailed home to all of our parents who have selected in-person instruction, along with the symptoms checklist and about 4 or 5 other documents that will go in that packet that will be mailed home to families who have selected in-person instruction. So again, you could approve this on March 17th, but we know students are starting on March 17th. We would like to communicate expectations with parents before then.
Mhm.
So I do offer that up as well, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Kate, we would need a motion to move the addendum, which details additional responsibilities due to COVID-19 to 6D.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Mr. Pierce. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Long. It's been moved to action. Moved by Ms. Pierce and second by Ms. Long. Okay, now we'll come to 6D. Is there a motion? Motion for 6D for action.
So move, Mr. Chair. With regards to item B.
6D.
Wait a minute. Just a moment. These are Code of Student Conduct Addendum.
Right.
Item B, move to action item 6D.
We're at the action. We just need a motion for the
So
action.
move then, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Pierce has made a motion for us to approve 6D, the addendum to the student code of conduct. Is there a second? Mr. Dance, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bell. Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin, once again. Okay. Dr. Petrie Martin, we'll move next to C.
So our next staff report is an item in which we had discussed briefly at our previous school board meetings. If we saw that we were having some learning loss in certain areas, or we were not moving in certain content areas, that we wanted to be able to bring recommendations to you on how we were going to address that. So at this time, I will turn our presentation over to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Daniels, and our Director of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Tompkins, and they want to share with us a recommendation for a supplemental reading program for our youngest learners to push them even harder to reach that goal of reading by 3rd grade, because we know if very often they don't read by 3rd grade, it is very hard to recover. So we do have a recommendation to hit our students earlier with some supplemental reading programs. So Dr. Daniels.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. Good evening, Chair Pritchett, Vice Chair Pierce, school board members, community members, and of course, Dr. Petrie Martin. Tonight, we would like to present to you information regarding a supplemental reading program for our kindergarten through 2nd grade students. This program is called Waterford. The Waterford Program individualizes instruction based on the needs of students. Tonight, Ms. Tompkins will share our phonological awareness literacy screening data, or our PALS data, and why this program will be successful for our students. Ms. Tompkins has experience using this program and has witnessed the great success that this program brings. So Ms. Tompkins.
Thank you so much, Dr. Daniels, to Chair Pritchard, Vice Chair Pierce, board members, to Dr. Petrie Martin, and assembled tonight, including our community. Thank you so much for allowing me to provide you some information about a program that I believe will support our students for the loss that they have had.
Miss Tompkins?
Yeah.
We are struggling to hear you, and we're not sure why.
Hold on 1 second. Can you hear me now, or is that not better?
It's still a little wobbly.
Okay, hold on. I need to probably. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Barely.
Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, it's still wobbly, and we do think it's on your end, Ms. Tompkins, maybe with the internet service.
I think it's my volume on the computer. I will probably have to come in and go out.
She's requesting to go out again and come back in, Chair, to the Zoom meeting. Yes, I think. So, Ms. Tompkins, we are going to move to our next agenda item and then come back to you. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So at this time, hopefully you all can hear me. We will be moving to an update on our Innovate 2022 strategic plan, as well as giving our community, as well as the board, an update on how we are moving to revise the corrective action plan that will end in 2021. So at this time, if you could pull up the presentation, I will, there are quite a few slides, but I will take us through relatively with a sense of urgency. So we know that back in 2016, there was a strategic plan called Innovate 2022 that the Cameron Foundation, in partnership with the school division, organized. Let's go to the next slide. So at that time, we had the Innovate 2022 strategic plan, but we also have the corrective action plan that was completed in partnership with the state. And so with that being said, our leadership team has been functioning with two plans that we have been using. We have been using the corrective action plan and Innovate 2022. Has been challenging because the two plans don't necessarily talk to one another, but we try our best to monitor both plans, and we are very excited about the chance to revise our corrective action plan and start fresh. Next slide. So today I will focus on Innovate 2022 and give you a little bit of the corrective action plan toward the end. Next slide. So we know that the mission of Petersburg City Public Schools is to develop 21st century citizens who are able to effectively collaborate, communicate, and innovate. Within Innovate 2022, there are three distinct goals, which are on the next slide. There is a goal for academic mastery. There is a goal for student empowerment, and there is a digital learning and beyond goal. And I'm going to focus on these three goals this evening. They have what's called supplemental tasks in the Innovate 2022 plan, which are pretty standard, but the goals are these three specific goals, which I will focus on. And each of them have anywhere from 3 to 5 strategies within each goal. Goal 1, which is on the next slide, focuses on the mastery of the core content, which in the state of Virginia would be the standards of learning, and expanding opportunities for learning. So when you go to the next slide, you will see the first strategy in Innovate 2022 is to have a curriculum. And you all were privy to the outstanding work that our team did to write curriculum from scratch that is aligned with the Virginia Standards of Learning. Within that curriculum, you will see that we have literacy and math models within the curriculum, as well as a balanced assessment system that promotes formative assessments first and then leads to benchmark assessments that will lead to state assessments and then student engagement. So when you go to the next slide, you will see this is the cover page for the new curriculum and pacing documents that our staff wrote last summer to get ready for this school year. And actually, Ms. Tompkins took you through all of these curriculum and pacing documents a few months ago. Also on our website, if you go to the next slide, you will see there we have all of our scope and sequence documents posted for all of our parents and our community members. So if our parents want to work with students in the home, they will know where we are for content areas as well as grade levels. That is all posted on our website as well. Also on our website, we have posted all of the Virginia Department of Education Standards of Learning by content area. And then we have created lesson plan templates as well to support our teachers. If you go to the next slide, you will see a sample of a scope and sequence document that we have posted on our website. So our parents will know each quarter what students are learning per content area and grade level. If you go to the next slide, this is a breakdown of what our curriculum and pacing guides include. They include performance tasks. That's part of the assessment system. So we know if students are getting it or not getting it so that we can provide interventions. We also have gifted and enrichment activities for our students who get it and are ready to move on. We also have standards and activities for our English as a second language students, as well as our special education students as well. So those curriculum and pacing documents are pretty extensive. But then we go a step further. If you look at the next slide, we offer lesson plan exemplars for all of our teachers. So they know what the learning target is, and then we break down the lesson with discovery, exploration, different activities. This is where the student engagement happens. And then we offer up strategies that hit exploration, the practice, and then the task. That tells us if the student has it or not. So a lot of work has been done, and it really started the school year 2019-2020 to have a curriculum in place. And we are so excited to say we have done that, and now we are working that curriculum now, and it is aligned to the standards of learning. The next slide just shows you how we provide training to teachers really weekly. Every week, we put out this professional development calendar where teachers can take different trainings, and one of them always circles back to the curriculum and the pacing documents, okay? And then the next slide just highlights for what we call the Blue Book in Petersburg City Public Schools. The Blue Book is a document that tells our school leaders how we will monitor instruction for improvement. When you go to the next slide, it really describes what we do during the instructional excellence reviews, which helps us monitor what is going on with instruction. We look at data such as attendance. We look at student and staff attendance during that process. We look at discipline data. We look at benchmark data. So not only do we have a curriculum, but we have a way of monitoring to make sure the students are learning that information. So that is strategy 1. If you go to the next strategy under goal 1, which is strategy 2, where we have to cultivate a literacy-focused student experience, we have multiple ways that we do that in Petersburg City Public Schools. If you go to the next slide, I just want to remind our community, our board agreed for us to purchase Phonics and Phonological as a literacy program. It is a phonics-based literacy program, which we had gotten away from, in all honesty. Now we're back to it. This is the first year we have it in Petersburg City Public Schools, and we're excited about it because we believe that was the missing link. Phonics-based instruction is critical for students to be able to not only learn their letters, but learn how to put the letters together to make a word, then make a sentence and a paragraph, and become great novelists, right? Which is what we would want. So the Phonics Program started this year, but we're very excited and we thank the board for that. The next slide talks about a lot of the professional development that our central office staff receive, as well as our teachers receive. So our central office, we have a team that participates in a literacy professional learning network with other school districts across the state. Then when you go to the next slide, you will see that every school sends teachers to what we call Teachers in Action. And this is very specific to content areas. Last year, the whole focus was on literacy. What we do is when we have that instructional excellence review, where we look at data for all the schools, the principals present, the assistant principals present, they give us information on how they're implementing Teachers in Action, so that we know you just don't go to the training and come back and not implement. We need to know what you're doing with this training. So that's another piece of making literacy live in those schools. If you go to the next slide, and many of our board members have seen this before, when we do our instructional excellence reviews in every single school, we collect data on what we are seeing. We try to see if what we are seeing is aligned to the curriculum. And you can see here for the month of September, October, November, December, where we fell across the school division with our lesson plans being aligned, the activities being aligned, and it met the right level of rigor and cognition. So we do that every single month. Sometimes we go into schools twice a month to collect this kind of data. If you go to the next slide, you will see we also collect data on literacy strategies that are being used. This goes back to Teachers in Action. These are the literacy strategies that Teachers in Action promoted through training. So this is another way we follow up to make sure it's happening. If you go to the next slide, you will see the third strategy for Goal 1, and this is about project-based learning. And for us, that is STEM or STEAM here in Petersburg City Public Schools. And again, you've seen some of this, but I just wanted to remind everyone that this past year, we really hit STEAM pretty hard with the Flying Classroom and some other initiatives to ensure that our students are getting a good interdisciplinary education, bringing math, science, engineering, technology together. So if you go to the next slide, you will see we started in pre-K now with the Wolf Trap STEM program over at Westview. And then I will show you in a minute some of the elementary experiences we're having in STEM, and then what we're also doing at the secondary level. I also want to remind everyone that at the secondary level, many of our projects are service learning projects because it gives the students a chance to do things that could impact the community. With COVID, we didn't do as much as we did last year, but hopefully if we get the kids back in person, we can go back to doing more of that. If you go to the next slide, this is just a reminder that we have the Flying Classroom. Oh, if we could advance the slides and go one more. Just a reminder that we have the Flying Classroom kits. And for those of you who may not be aware, the Flying Classroom is the STEM curriculum that was founded by Barrington Irving, who was the only African-American to fly around the world. He does global expeditions around the world, and then he teaches students virtually using global expeditions. And almost all of them have an engineering design challenge, which is why the kids have kits, so they can put things together at home as well. So when you go to the next slide, I'm not going to read these to you, but this lists out all of the initiatives we have for our elementary schools in the area of project-based learning in STEM. If you go to the next slide, it will show you all of the different units that our elementary students engage in. They have a physics unit, They have a natural hazards unit. If you go to the next slide, you will see that they have a lot of additional things in the middle school as well that are very similar. We're excited that we're coming back face to face because our middle school students wanted to build a solar car this year. And a lot of what they've been doing is virtual, but now maybe they can get their hands around a lot of these supplies and begin that process. If you go to the next slide, you will see that we had a lot of face-to-face activities planned. We are doing the Reach Challenge again. So for those of you who may not know this, we participated in the Reach Challenge last year with our middle school students, and they actually won an international award because the students created an adaptive technology tool for someone who needed additional help. So this is how we do service projects, by creating things. Our students created things to help folks who needed assistant technology. Well, we're going to do that again this year. Just to continue on, let's look at some STEM initiatives for the high school. We're still planning to do the renovation of a home. And again, now that we can get back to in-person instruction, hopefully our kids can get their hands into the actual work of renovating a home. They've been taking classes virtually to prep for that activity, but now hopefully we can get that done. And then the next slide is just a list of the trainings that our teachers go through to be able to provide support to our students as they go through all of these different activities. If you go to the next slide, it addresses strategy number 4, which is to improve access and exposure to course offerings and learning experiences. Recently, as you go to the next slide, you will see that this board approved the new course registration guide. Actually, I believe it was last month. And within that guide, as you go to the next slide, you will see that we have put forth advanced tracks for our students. One of the things we want to do moving forward is to have our middle schoolers head to the high school with at least 4 credits. As we know, they have been able to get 1 high school credit at the middle school. Our goal is to get them 4 high school credits, if possible. So we created this advanced track process for all of our major content areas that we really do think will help. This is our science and social studies track. If you go to the next slide, this is our English and math track. So we are very excited about the potential to grow this. Currently, we have about 53 students at the middle school in 8th grade who are on track for advanced courses. We want to grow that out over time and have even more students who are able to take foreign languages, environmental science, and so on at the middle school that would transfer to the high school. Next, I will move on to goal 2. And this is our student empowerment goal, and we have a few strategies here. If you go to strategy 1, it is the positive behavior intervention and supports strategy. And we actually took this to be a little bit broader once several of us arrived in 2019. So this is a tiered intervention. So we decided to move forward with VTSS, which is the Virginia Tiered Systems of Support. So again, I have to thank this board because last May you allowed us to reorganize our central office by creating a unit called Student Support Services. And so with that, we're now able to provide 4 tiers of support for students who need additional help with student behaviors, and that was all part of PBIS as well as VTSS. If you go to the next slide, you will see again that we are a member of VTSS for the state of Virginia, and we've been getting quite a few kudos on social media for the work that we've been doing. The next slide you will see is our umbrella that we use that explains how everything comes together under one umbrella. So now we have 4 tiers of support for behavior, and we have 3 tiers of support for academics. And that all started from this one strategy in Innovate 2022. If you go to the next slide, I will move to strategy 2, which is to empower student ownership. If you go to the next slide, you will see a sample of how students are tracking their own progress. We have students who are tracking their progress on their benchmarks in the areas of reading, in math, and in science, depending on the grade level. This is another sample of how students are goal setting as well. And then when you go to the next slide, we purchased Major Clarity because we needed a tool for our middle schoolers to start their plan of study for high school. So this is a sample of what it looks like, where the students begin to plan starting in 6th grade. So this is an example of a student who wants to focus on the transportation cluster of CTE, so that student can begin to track what it would look like to get certifications in that area. So our students are engaged in their own academic planning and thought process, which leads me to the next strategy, which is career and technical ed. And as you all know, this is a big area of work for us. Next slide. This is where we are able to talk about our Diploma Plus initiative, which is something we're very excited about. We've had CTE courses in Petersburg for many, many years, but now it's time to reset, revamp, and take it to a whole nother level. So if you go to the next slide, you will see our definition for Diploma Plus. What we're trying to do is focus on career and technical areas that are not only high demand, but also high wage. And that's how we're trying to build it out, which is why the health sciences have become so important to us in Petersburg, because right now that is one of the most high demand careers in the Crater region, as well as this part of Virginia. So we're continuing to build that out as well. When you go to the next slide, you will see this, and many of you have seen this before. This is how we're going to get this done. We're going to get it done with partnerships. We have a CTE advisory committee. We've added the Diploma Plus advisory board. We're adding a house building foundation so that our students will always have a house or a project that they can work on. For our carpentry students, we're adding masonry and electrician and all those great things that they'll be able to work on. And I'm not going to read this to you because you've seen it before, but these are all partnerships with the community college, with Richard Bland, to really grow this out. Okay. And I will say this, I said this before, but it's something we're pretty excited about. During the first semester of school, every single one of our carpentry students got their OSHA certification. So they're on their way to the next carpentry certification. So we believe if we'll build these opportunities, our students are ready. And we just want to take it the extra mile. And again, we're going to continue to focus on good data to make these decisions, things like who's entering the courses, who's getting certificates, who's in higher ed, and we want the jobs EQ data to guide all of this. So very good work. We're excited about it. If you go to strategy number 4, we have to begin targeting middle schoolers for that transition to academic content and also real world careers and industry. If you go to the next slide, Junior Achievement has been a huge partner for us in preparing our middle school and high school students for careers as well as the world of work. And as you can see here, we have multiple programs we're using. We're using the Junior Achievement, It's My Future program with our students, and this is where they go through a researching of careers presentation at the middle school so they can decide which way they want to go with their career. So when they're doing their major clarity plan, they're researching careers at the same time. Our high school students are using the Career Success Program, which teaches soft skills, things like communication and collaboration. And then when you go to the next slide, we have more students doing the financial planning and personal finance unit from Junior Achievement than we've had in the past. We think it's really important that all of our students at some grade level, and right here it is in the 10th grade, they are getting exposure to good personal finance and planning, because we don't want them in debt. We don't want them getting a lot of credit cards or any of those things that we know can hinder their progress. So these are all things that we are doing to enhance their real world experiences and prepare them for the next step. Strategy number 5 is next, and this was a strategy to focus on attendance. We started working on this one pretty soon after we arrived in 2019. And if you go to the next slide, you will see some of the activities we had in the fall of 2019 to focus on attendance. We looked at protocols for attendance. We looked at who was really doing the work of attendance, roles and responsibilities, and we launched a public campaign around attendance. If you go to the next slide, you will see some of the things we did to launch that campaign. We had a communication plan. Our students here at Petersburg High School actually came up with the slogan for our attendance campaign. We worked with our truancy officers, and we started actually getting in a bus and going out and canvassing the community. And we had several of our school board members who actually joined us, and then COVID hit, and then we weren't able to continue. But if you go to the next slide, this is a flyer that definitely we shared in 2019 to get people excited about going out and campaigning for students being in school every single day. And one of our slogans was 2 days is too much, because if you miss 2 days of school per month, that's 18 days, and that makes you chronically absent for the school year. So that was one of the things that we promoted during that campaign. If you go to the next slide, you will see another flyer that we used to promote the canvassing events. And we also canvassed with local businesses as well, so that the businesses could share the importance of students attending school. And then what's exciting is on the next slide, because the WAVE bus is coming. So when we do go back to our attendance canvassing in the community, we will actually have an official bus called the WAVE that will also have books on the bus. It will have some technology on the bus. So we'll be actually able to push into communities and hold small group sessions with parents and students using the WAVE bus. So we're excited about that coming forward. Next, if you want to go to goal 3, that is the goal that speaks to digital learning and beyond. And we have 3 strategies there. On the next slide, it begins to talk about the importance of mastering technology for 21st century learning. And in all honesty, this got ramped up when we went totally virtual, because we had to ensure that students and staff, and we had to be one-to-one. There's a strategy in here that talked about Vernon Johns being one-to-one, but everybody needed to be one-to-one for us to make that happen. So go to the next slide and we'll look at the first strategy. So the first strategy asked us to be able to work with our students to promote digital citizenship and 21st century skills such as information literacy, media literacy, and how to communicate with technology. So if you go to the next slide, you will see we had to quickly purchase a learning management system, because we did not have one in Petersburg City Public Schools, to be able to include a lot of good applications for students to learn how to track and do reports. And we didn't have a system to deliver courses, which we had to have. So we were fortunate to have Schoology as our LMS, and we are continuing to use that now. The next slide showed you what we had to do to become one-to-one in establishing kind of an infrastructure. We needed hardware, software, wiring, staffing, and all of that to become truly one-to-one. So if you go to the next slide, You will see that how we have moved our hardware progress starting in 2017 to now. We've had to purchase a lot of Chromebooks and devices to become one-to-one. We had to increase our access points at really all of our schools. And that's going to continue to be very important as long as we have the Petersburg Virtual Academy. So we had to up the hardware process. If you go to the next slide. We also had to do work on enhancing our network, and that is a continuous process to improve our network. Recently, our central office just went through some improvements to make sure that we can have a lot of Zoom meetings at one time and not drop or become unstable. So that's a constant process we're in. If you go to the next slide. We also have Clever, which is also a learning platform where many resources can be put on Clever. All of our students have a Clever account, and they are able to get to a lot of different apps on within Clever as well. All educational apps, but they can get there as well. If you go to the next slide. This strategy 3 is where it said that we wanted to expand the one-to-one personalized learning pilot at Vernon Johns Middle School to reach all 5th through 12 students in the division eventually. But we had to do that almost overnight. Within a few months' time, we had to make this happen so that we could go totally virtual. So a lot of work has gone into that, and I have to congratulate the staff. So when you go to the next slide, this is what we have handed out so far. We have handed out 4,071 devices. We still have some devices remaining as new students come in. We had to literally provide hotspots for a large majority of our community to make this happen. Over 1,000 hotspots have been distributed, and we still have a few hotspots remaining as well. If you go to the next slide. You will see all of the software that we have invested in to help our students with different types of resources. Some of these are also going to be, definitely some data collection tools as well. So they're not just educational resources, but those are included as well. And if you go to the next slide, I always want to remind folks that the other reason we were able to pull this off with all of the different logins that we have had during the Petersburg Virtual Academy is that we did hire additional help desk staff to be able to manage all of this. And when folks had a question, or they could call. So since December of last year to now, we've had over 2,000 requests from students for technology support, and we've had 769 requests from staff. So it's an ongoing process to work with staff and students in using the technology. Next slide. So what is up next? So this was a somewhat, I attempted to do that quickly, Chair, a review of how we have addressed Innovate 2022. But the next few slides tell you what we're doing to revise the other plan that we have to work with as well. Next slide. So we're going to try to make Innovate 2022, which will close out next year, and our corrective action plan, which closes out this year, we're going to eventually try to get to one document. So we in Petersburg have one plan that we can follow and collect data and all be on the same page. So if you go to the next slide, we have been working with the Virginia Department of Education on the revision process for our corrective action plan, which I am calling our continuous improvement plan for next school year. It would start next school year. And this is a mock-up of what it could look like for us as we move to something new and different. Next slide. And we have asked the Virginia Department of Education to allow us to use some of how you turn around schools and districts. So we are looking at the 4 domains for rapid school improvement as how we're organizing our new plan. Next slide. And you will see the 4 components that we are looking at are leadership, talent development, instructional transformation, and a cultural shift around accountability. So when you see, hopefully, this new plan that we will bring to you all, it will focus around those 4 areas of work. Next slide. So this is the timeline that we have been working with. We met with the Virginia Department of Education back on February 8th to start the process. They collected notes from all of us regarding these 4 areas. Then we have the partnership of Michelle Hairston, who is a contractor with the Department of Education. She is helping us to organize all of this work. So she took all of our notes from February 8th, organized them, and then we met with about 80 of our staff members on February 22nd to get initial feedback on where we were going with the new plan. And during the month of March, we're going to start community stakeholder sessions to get their feedback on where they think we are going. And if you look at the next slide, we hope to bring all of the information from our stakeholder groups back together in April. And then hopefully by May, we'll be able to bring something to the board that says this could be the new vision that we want to take and bring these plans together. It is a challenge to monitor more than one plan and to function with 2 plans. So we are just hoping that we can get there. And I think that concludes my report, Chair. I tried to speed that up, but that, I think, does it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Petrie Martin. I'll start to my right tonight. Mr. Pierce, any questions for Dr. Petrie Martin? Okay. Ms. Wynn? Okay. Mr. Dance? Mr. Miles? Mr. Lundy?
When you all got to the part, first of all, thank you. Somebody listened to the part about phonics. When Mr. Dance, you and myself, we were at Stewart School. And I don't care if Dr. Lane said, we need phonics, Mr. Dance, calling me Mr. Dance. He heard it. Somebody heard it, that we're out of line with phonics. What I do want to share or ask is, in working in Westview, it gives you an opportunity to see a lot of sponges ready to grasp everything. And I always wondered why don't we put an educator there that can bring that gap together for the kindergarten. So we start the phonics early. And you have to have someone on that team with you as you hire, because that's a special person that can look at the people that we need for kindergarten. We keep talking about other areas higher, but there is a very important area because our kids are coming in ready.
Yes.
The other thing, as we do this report that we have to be aware of and we have to do, we're going to have to talk about the tough thing. And the tough part of it, you all do excellent work. Other people have done excellent work also, but the tough thing is a city with money. We're going to have a tough conversation, a city with money. And so I appreciate everything you all have done, but we need to talk about a city with money. People that are surround us make progress because money is there to make progress. Yes. We try everything. We work hard. You all work hard. The board has worked hard. And the improvement of the help we need is not there. Money, the tough discussion, money. Thank you.
Yeah.
Miss Long, any questions? Are you on? You're on mute.
Okay, now? Okay. I just want to say I appreciate y'all. Dr. Petrie Martin just gave my committee report, so but I appreciate her because she's engaged. Like, she comes to the CTE meetings like, that's never happened before. And she's able to hear what we need And it's just like she said, reset, revamp, and taking it to a whole nother level. They are actually doing that. And it's like the difference before was, it seemed like when we were going to our committee meetings, everybody was dreaming and planning and brainstorming constantly. And every time we came back, we were still doing that. But with the team she has now, they are executing. And so I just got to say, I appreciate you and I thank you, because now I don't have to do my committee report because you did it.
Thank you, Ms. Long.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to hear from Crystal Tompkins? I was reserving my question until after she gives. I was reserving my questions till after she finished with the thing I'm reading, which, her presentation.
Oh, okay. So your questions are not for her Innovate 2020, and they're not. Oh, okay. So your questions are on the reading program. Okay. No problem. Dr. Petrie-Martin, I do have a question. It was on that last slide. He took down the last slide, but can I see that last page?
This one?
The last. Yes, where you had reviewed the final cap, and I think you said, well, at the next board meeting, you're going to bring it back. Now, my question, you're going to bring it back around May the 5th and the 19th. Okay. Are you bringing back, okay, because I'm confused. Are you bringing back a cap, or are you bringing back a 5-year strategic plan? Because we're required to have a strategic plan. Are the State Department telling you that we don't need one?
So the state has not mentioned a strategic plan. The state is focused on a new cap. So what we have asked them is if we can incorporate some elements from a strategic plan into the cap. Because as I said, it is very challenging to monitor both.
Okay.
And they said that was fine, which is why we're taking a different approach with the cap. But the last slide was strictly the cap.
Okay, so there's just the cap. So the 5-year strategic plan, you all have not started on that yet, because that comes up.
Correct. And what we're hoping to do is now align it with the cap, because in all honesty, the current cap we have in Innovate 2022 don't necessarily talk to each other. Yeah. So we're just hoping that as we move forward, those two can actually talk to each other. And they don't run on the same timeline, which makes it even more.
Question. So are you planning to keep the Innovate 2022? Are you going to use you're going to create your own strategic plan?
Yeah, what we really want to do is take the 4 domains that I mentioned and create a new strategic plan that could be 5-year. But if we don't start incorporating something new and different in the cap, we'll still be operating with 2 different sets of expectations.
Okay.
If the state can approve these 4 domains, then we can build the strategic plan based off of those 4 domains.
Okay. Now I understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make sure that we will be working on a new strategic plan.
Yeah, but this ends in 2022, so we can definitely start that process next year.
Okay.
But the cap has to be revised now because it ends this summer.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. You want to see if Ms. Tompkins, she's ready?
Yes.
Yes,
Ms. Tompkins.
I'm ready. Can you all hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you very strong. That's wonderful.
I just had to change some of my hardware so that you could hear me. So yes, I am ready.
Okay, and so, this went in reverse order, Ms. Tompkins, but I did talk a little bit about literacy, so hopefully it segues into your presentation nicely.
It does. So thank you so much once again, Chairman Pritchard, Vice Chair Pierce, the school board members, community, and Dr. Petrie-Martin. I'm really happy. This is a great segue into the supplemental program to our Fontes and Pinnell and our Phonics program that we have within our school division. So next slide, please. So what is Waterford? Waterford is a supplemental program. It focuses on phonics. It focuses on all of those domains that students need to have in order to read. Letter identification, recognition, sounds. It also has a family engagement component where learning doesn't just stop when kids leave our doors. It continues at home. It's aligned with state standards, and it also has an equity lens. And those are the things that we have to focus on while we're helping our young people read. So this supports our phonics program. It is not a replacement. It is an extra layer of support that is adaptive to where our kids are. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I love about this program, we used it in Portsmouth and had great success with it, is that it is individualized. As much as we try to differentiate instruction for kids through small group instruction, we know that it is difficult to meet the needs of every kid, specifically based on their phonological and phonics needs. So this program is adaptive. So wherever the student is, this program would tailor skills, tailor interventions to close those early learning gaps. So this is one of the unique features of this program, which is why this is a sole source provider. Next slide, please. So why Waterford and why do we need a supplemental program? If you take a look at our PALS data, which is our phonological awareness literacy screening data, you see that we have students who come into our schools that are ready to learn. So where you see in this chart where it says not identified, that means that that student in the fall of 2020, so when we tested that student in the fall, those students met the standards for what a kindergartner would have to show that he or she is on the trajectory for reading proficiency. Where you see students that were ID'd or ID, we call identified PALS, those students have some deficiencies that we need to support in order to get them back on the trajectory for reading. So these are our scores as of the fall. We provide support all year long, but the state requires that we only test students in grades K through 3 who were identified as needing some additional support twice a year, in the fall and in the spring. But we have decided to have another layer of support by having students tested in the middle of the year, so that we know whether or not they're making progress based on our intervention system. So as you can see, we tested 306 students, 239 students had the basic skills necessary to be proficient in reading, but 67 total students were identified. Now, if you take a look at the next slide, something happens when we get to first grade. As you will see, we have an increase in the number of students who are identified. And one of the reasons for the increase is that these are two different tests. So when students have the basic skills that put them along the trajectory of reading, when they get to first grade, they add some additional layers that show us whether or not those kids are making progress based on the progression of knowledge needed to read successfully and on grade level by grade 3. And we have some issues here, as you can see. And let's take a look at second grade. Second grade, we too have issues. And one of the things that I say is that the foundation is critical. If our students miss anything, whether they don't have a teacher who is able to teach at the level necessary to teach reading appropriately, we don't have a proper phonics-based program that supports our students who don't have the requisite skills to become proficient readers. When they leave kindergarten ready with a certain level of knowledge, you have to build on that knowledge. They don't forget it. You must build. There is a progression of knowledge that takes place. If there is any gap between pre-K through 2, you will see those gaps show up in 3rd grade. Hence why many of our kids are lacking in those prerequisite skills for reading, which is one of the reasons why Waterford Program is needed to fill in those gaps. Next slide, please. So, why Waterford again? This particular program is correlated 99.5% to our Virginia Standards of Learning. So anytime you have a program that you must ensure that it is aligned to your state standards. Many times, folks will adopt programs and have not done the proper vetting to ensure that they're aligned to your state standards and not simply aligned to national standards. So this program does meet that curriculum correlation fact that we need to have. Next slide, please. So I want to talk about the progression of knowledge. This progression of knowledge follows the scope and sequence that we need for our kids to become proficient readers by the end of 2nd grade, whereby they are starting 3rd grade reading on 3rd grade level. These early literacy skills are aligned to our phonics progression and scope and sequence. So when students see the supplemental program of Waterford and the activities that they will receive based on that program, it won't look as if they're getting Phonics and Pinnell and Waterford. Those two systems align and they just build on each other. So this is something that will certainly help our students close in those gaps before we are getting to 3rd grade. And one thing that I really want to stress is that the goal here is to ensure that our students, that those gaps are closed by the time those students get to the end of 2nd grade. 3rd grade is not the benchmark. The end of 2nd grade is where we need to ensure our students are reading on grade level going into 3rd grade. Next slide, please. So what does the research say? The research says the average kid with limited word exchanges at home will have a 30 million word gap by the age of 3. And what this research suggests is that students who don't come from a literacy-rich environment have about 616 word exchanges per hour, compared to students who come from literacy-rich environments have a word exchange of 2,153 word exchanges per hour. And when you add that up from birth to 3, that's where you come with that 30 word million gap. So when we don't have a supplemental program that helps our kids build vocabulary as well as understand how to read, how letters and sounds work together to become words, build sentences, that's where our kids will continue to have those gaps. And Waterford will help close those gaps by providing that individualized adaptive support to also support classroom instruction. Next slide, please. So taking a look at the gains that Waterford has. When students use Waterford, it is clear that learning outcomes have increased. We have several programs and several folks who've used Waterford to include Fairfax County Schools, Mecklenburg County Schools, and of course, Portsmouth Public Schools. Fairfax only has one elementary school that has accreditation with warning, and Mecklenburg County Public Schools only has no elementary schools, and they've been using the program for quite some time. When I arrived in Portsmouth in 2016, we have 13 elementary schools, and only 6 of those schools were fully accredited. In English and reading, those were the skills that our students lacked. And when we introduced Waterford and had our students that were better prepared coming into kindergarten through 2nd grade, we closed that gap. And when I left from the 13 elementary schools, 11 were fully accredited. And Waterford played a significant role in preparing our earliest learners to read prior to entering first grade. Next slide, please. So what is the cost and what is included? Our cost for this 3-year sole source provider is $135,890. With this 3-year contract, we're going to get 30 professional development sessions. The program can be used in virtual or face-to-face learning, so it doesn't matter. Our students will still receive the benefit when we return to face-to-face full time. They also will receive it if they are in our virtual academy. It is a personalized adaptive program. So that means that every student will receive individualized care under this program based on what their needs are. It provides support for our English language learners. It also has a component where our kids are learning how to read mathematically and science using our science connections. Because many of our kids struggle with reading nonfiction text, expository text, which they need to learn how to read and become proficient, especially as they move along the trajectory of English. It's a family engagement tool where our parents can be involved in helping support literacy of our students. And then we also have what's called the Class Advantage tool, where it is able to identify and target those small group instructional needs of our kids, so that when our Title I staff and our teachers work with small groups, the program has already targeted what those skills are and what those students need to be proficient. So I will entertain any questions at this time. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold up for a second. I'm going to start to my left for questions. Okay. Ms. Long. Mr. Lundy.
Yes, Ms. Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Always enjoy listening to you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Thompson, how do you feel about that connection that I was speaking of our early childhood center and kindergarten, and placing someone there, placing the right teachers in those classrooms, that kindergarten classroom, that first grade classroom? Because those kids seem to be so excited from Westview, and then we lose them.
So how I will answer that question, Mr. Lundy, not having a proficient, highly qualified pre-K through kindergarten, first and second grade teacher is like building a house without a foundation.
That's right.
One of the things that I do know that research supports, that let's say a child has a proficient kindergarten teacher who's wonderful, and they're identified, they're not identified as PALs. If they don't have a proficient teacher in first grade, the research suggests that it takes between 2 and 3 years of instruction with a highly qualified teacher to close the gaps missed from 1 year of having a poorly developed instructional program within first grade, or a teacher that was not highly qualified.
And that's what I'm saying. We talk about, when I was just sharing with Dr. Petrie Martin, talking about the tough things. And this is where we have to go to our legislators to talk about things, because if we put monies out to get various people in various places, this just seems to be one of the most important areas that we need to concentrate on, getting the right people in the right place. It seems like the equity of teachers, the distribution is not fair when you look at it. And then it looks like in the middle of the race, we always change the programs and start leaving the phonics out. But I thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I will say, Mr. Lundy, that with the new standards of learning, phonics is a part of the new Virginia standards of learning. So when teachers aren't teaching it, it's not because it's not in the curriculum. Sometimes is that they don't have a place for it or maybe not know how to do it. And one of the reasons why this program is going to be so important is it has a pathway for our students, and it aligns with our Phonics and Phonel program that has a script to help our teachers teach the phonics correctly, pronounce those sounds correctly, because you can't unring the bell. If our students learn letter sounds incorrectly, you can't unring the bell. You have to teach it correctly. So there are lots of programs that support that. This Waterford program also supports so that kids are hearing words and sounds correctly so that they're able to read moving forward.
As always, I enjoy hearing you. Block A, beating hot, beating hot.
There you go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Miles?
Thank you for the excellent presentation. I love numbers. My thing is quality control, quality assurance.
Thank you so much, Mr. Miles.
Assess, evaluate, and then assess, plan, execute. The numbers were clear. We're teaching the kindergarten to read on the kindergarten level. We're supposed to teach kindergartners to read on up to the first grade level. So when they leave kindergarten, we need some accountability because your data is clear. We're teaching the first grade to read on the first grade level. So when they finish the first grade, they still reading on the first grade level. The data is clear. When they finish the second grade, they still reading on the second grade level. We got to read to advance, not read to maintain. The data is clear. What Mr. London said, I did not realize that till I saw your presentation. He's exactly right. Those kindergartens are leaving kindergarten at kindergartners. They need to leave kindergarten at first graders. And we're not being accountable. It's not just a program. I will support phonics. I will support whatever you put up there. My thing is science and math. But at the same time, we gotta be accountable. I'm telling you right now, our kindergarten need to leave kindergarten at first graders. They need to leave first grade as second graders. And we got to be responsible for that. We do. So what are we got to, I need to know that when we, going forward, if our teachers need help, because I heard Mr. Lundy and I heard you saying staff development, we got to be responsible for that. If we're short somewhere, we got to identify it, we got to correct it, we got to train, we got to support. I ain't talking about getting rid of nobody. I'm talking about making us the best we can be. This is real. They got to live with this for life. We're not preparing them. I see it. It's clear. We're failing them. And when we got 70% of the kindergarten leaving 70, and we're saying they're reading on level, that's kindergarten level. They leave kindergarten reading on the first grade level. They leave first grade reading on the second grade level. And that's why they failing at the end of the second grade, because they're still reading on the second grade level and they need to be reading on third grade level. When they finish second grade, they should be third graders. When they leave third grade, they should be fourth graders. And so we need to put some things in place for accountability. And that's what I want to know. What are we going to put in place? Because we've been doing this for years. These people are experts in staff development, training, everything. When we go forward, I want our kindergartens, the lead kindergartens, reading on the first grade level. And so we need to put some things in place, and we need to know what we're going to do differently. Getting a program is just a program. What we do with our staff and our kids, that's personal. We got to make it happen. And the thing is, if we keep doing the same thing over and over again, and it's not working, and the reason why it's not working is because of us. It's not because of the kids. We failing them. And we gotta find out where it's at. So we gotta assess this thing. We gotta look at the last program and say what could we have done better, and how could we have made and where we were weak at, and go back and fill in the gaps, the cracks, and the holes. We got too many gaps, too many cracks, and too many holes. And the thing is that you can change cars, but if we don't take care of the maintenance, we need to do something. And I'm with you, Mr. London. Kindergarten is the place. And we need those kids leaving kindergarten reading on the first grade level, and what we're going to do about it. And that's what, and it's just not the program. It's the way we work with the staff. How many hours we putting in that classroom with the staff? Do we have individuals go in there with the staff? If we got somebody weak, how do we strengthen them? If they need more training, how do they get that? Because we're going too far. We can't wait to the end of the school year to evaluate someone and say we got 78% of the kindergarten kids leaving kindergarten still reading on the kindergarten level. That's not success.
So Mr. Miles, can I just add a little piece to it? So the 78% that you see, those students leave reading on the first grade level. That's kindergarten. So if they are not identified, then they leave us leaving on the first grade level. That's what that means. That means those kids have met the burden for kindergarten.
So how can you explain our failure?
One of the things that happens is when they go and they take that first grade test, there is something that happens to them in terms of instruction. Sometimes they are identified in first grade. There are lots of reasons. There could be the summer slide. There are some learning gaps, but there is this progression called kindergarten ninth month, or first grade first month, which means if they had been in school for 1 month, this might be what they would have learned. Some kids come to, when they take that first grade PALS assessment, their score could say first grade 8th month, which means in September, that child knows enough reading material as if he or she had been in school for an entire year. So there are multiple layers to the data. A lot of it has to go with readiness. It has to go with students' ability to retain information at the time of testing, because when we test them at mid-year, if it is a small glitch, then those students can test out. So this is not a permanent mark on your record. You don't stay here all the time, which is why we've added that mid-year assessment. So if you test out, then you no longer are identified as needing those PALS services.
You did very good at identifying some of the reasons why that to support that data. Now, I want to know, what did we do to make up the difference?
So right now, what we've done is we have purchased a phonics program, which we did not have a phonics program that allowed our teachers to know exactly the progression of teaching. There is a sequence by which you must teach phonics. And a lot of it is it's not simply going A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There is a sequence by which they must teach. And with the Phonics and Phonological program, our teachers have been trained the appropriate sequence. And I believe that those numbers are going to change because they are teaching the sequence. There's a progression of knowledge that has to take place. And it's not just A to Z. You can go A, you can go B, and then you can go to E. There's a long vowel, short vowel, capital letters, lowercase letters, using that language. And that takes practice. That is repetition of language. And when you don't do it in the proper perspective and you don't have the proper knowledge, the kids don't retain it.
That's very good. You did a good job of explaining that. Now I'm going to restate my question. How are we going to be accountable?
Now, when you say we being accountable,
I'm talking about the school system. I'm talking about the specialists that's implementing this program and training. There's all these things you identify is exactly what we need to correct. Now, we need to be accountable.
So right now, I oversee all of the Title I folks, the instructional coaches, the reading and math teachers who work with those kids who are on this list. So those kids who have been identified, they keep a data notebook. And every time those kids are assessed, which is weekly, we take a look. What interventions are needed? Where did the kid land? What do we need to do differently? Because sometimes it's a glitch. Sometimes it's just some kind of individual instructional piece that's missing that will unlock the door for our kids reading. So we know where every kid who's identified, we know where they are, we know who they are, we know what their needs are, and we know what interventions we need to put in place so that those groups remain fluid and not simply you're stuck in this group because you have not performed.
Why haven't this worked in the past?
If I can jump in.
Sure.
So Fontes and Pinnell, we are just using this school year for the first time. Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to make sure everybody, when we arrived, there was not a phonics-based program in place that we saw. And so the board approved Fontes and Pinnell, so we started using in this school year. So you're asking us, why didn't this work before? This is the first time we're using Fontes and Pinnell. Is that what you're asking, Mr. Miles?
No, I'm talking when we have a program, it would say we putting this supplement program in.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be accountable.
Yes.
We were not accountable for the last program because look at the results. Failure is not an option. If we're going to teach a child to read, Mr. London pointed out, we need to teach this. Make sure that child is reading, leaving kindergarten. And from each grade level, we're getting behind each year. The data show that we're getting further and further behind. Now there's gaps. How are we going to fill those gaps? There's cracks. How are we going to fill those holes? I mean, we have to be accountable. The public, we are public servants. And we're responsible with something that's going to affect these kids for life. If you can't read or you're behind, you're not going to be as successful as someone that can read, that's not behind. And we have to take some responsibility. We got to set some quality assurance, quality controls measures in place where we're not going to fall behind like these numbers. We have to improve those numbers, and we have to set goals and plans and goals and work toward that. We can't show numbers each year and say, okay, this is where we are. We got to show exactly what she showed. This is where we were, and this is where we are right now. And we got to improve this. This is. I'm sad, but we got to do better.
So, Mr. Miles, we could do a whole session with you on how we are holding ourselves accountable.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna hold my peace. But y'all, you understand where I'm coming from, so I'm gonna hold my peace.
Yeah, and we want to be held accountable. I don't think any of us came here knowing what the data said if we weren't willing to be held accountable.
Correct.
And I said earlier that we have an instructional excellence review process that we use to monitor, to make sure people are doing what they need to do. But accountability comes in a lot of different forms. It comes in the evaluation for performance that we do with all of our staff. It comes from looking at the data regularly. It comes from looking at our goals and meeting benchmarks. So it comes in a lot of different forms. So I want to make sure the community knows we are here to hold ourselves accountable. What we try to do is if we see data not going in the right direction, we try to bring to the board, what can we do differently to address it? So that's really what we're doing this evening, is trying to say this is not moving in the way we want it to. Therefore, we would like to make a recommendation. That's our purpose this evening. But if we want to have a whole session on holding staff accountable through the use of data, through performance evaluations and so on, we could certainly do that as well. But we want to be held accountable. So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Petrie-Martin. I will now turn, if there are no other questions, Chairman Pritchett, are there any additional questions?
Yes,
for me?
I haven't finished going around.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
believe it or not, we're just on the second person. Mr. Dance, we're at Mr. Dance next, I believe.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Tompkins, for that presentation. I think it's a very good program, and I'm looking forward to having it implemented in our school system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dance.
It's Wynn.
Very informative, very needed information.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wynn.
Mr. Pierce.
I just wanted to add, but first of all, thank you, Ms. Tompkins, for the presentation. And this is the first time that we've actually had a, I would say, a progressive program that you can actually target, put your finger on it, monitor it, and make assessments as you move along. And that's what it looks like. Is that correct, Ms. Tompkins?
That is exactly what the program is.
And because it's the first program, and even at this level, now it looks as if we can make that kind of an impact, because we've been looking to do this for some time. That's the first thing. And secondly, I think all of us, I know what it looks like when a child starts out from, like you build a house, solid ground, putting in a footing, putting in a solid foundation, those types of things. And it looks as if this program has all of those unique interventions. I think it mentioned something about this is a nonprofit organization.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you indicated that it's a 3-year contract of just under $136,000.
Yes, sir.
So well, first of all, I guess this would be to the superintendent. How is that money, or where is that money going to be declarated from?
Actually, I think it is Title I, but actually, no, it is going to be the PALS funding. So in the state of Virginia, each school division gets funding to address kindergarten through 2nd grade. So it comes from that pot of funding.
Okay, I'm always curious about where the line items are going to come from, because as Mr. Miles indicated, we are held accountable for being good stewards of the public's money. I think my last question was, at the end of that 3 years, are we to reassess the program? Is the board going to reassess that? Or because we have to reassess this, reevaluate this if we intend to renew the contract. Is that correct?
That would be correct, yes.
All right. And based on all of that data that we collect, will probably be the answer as to whether or not we fulfill the contract.
Right, and we would certainly look at it before. I mean, we're going to look at it progressively from year to year, but for contract purposes, it would be the end of the 3rd year. But we'll look at data immediately after we begin using the product, if it is approved.
Okay, all right. I think that answered all of my questions. Like I said, from what it sounds and looks like, I think we'll have a solid program with this. But we'll see as time moves on, as you assess and evaluate. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierce. Ms. Long? Are you on mute?
I wasn't going to say anything at first, but listening to Mr. Miles, before we didn't have we didn't have anything in place. I don't want to repeat what somebody else has said, but I remember when the children was over my house, and the first word was "the." Of course, a lot of stuff starts with "the," and I asked him to go ahead and read it, and he said "tahi," and I couldn't understand why he couldn't get that word and realized that phonics wasn't in our school system. I said something to Dr. Petrie Martin about it, and we had given out a little video, right, for the little girl that was having her issue, and we realized that it was needed to be implemented in the school system like ASAP. And when I'm listening to her and when her presentation, she says not only she's going to do the assessments at the beginning and the end, she's going to do it in the middle, so that we make sure that we have understanding before they fail, before the end of the school year. And another thing that I know, I'm reading, I got my book in my Japanese. If I don't understand their phonics, then even though I'm trying to read, I don't understand the sounds. What she's saying with this program is that you're getting the sounds too. So the children can look at look at the words and hear how they sound versus just trying to read. And I think that that's really important. I don't feel like if we hold up just to understand it a little bit more while school's starting back up. I'd like to implement it as soon as possible, if we can.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Well, hold up. You finish? Were you looking for her to respond?
No.
Did you need a response?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. Mr. Miles.
I support the program too. What I want to make perfectly clear, and I'm going to try to make it brief as possible. And I'll give you an example. In sports, in the playbook, every play is designed to do the same thing, to score. This program is designed to work. It's our expertise and what we put into it, in the training, in the preparation, is what's going to make it work. You can have the best plays, the best programs in the world. It's not going to work unless we do our due diligence. And that's where the accountability come in at. I believe that the program will work, but we have to make sure that we dot every I, cross every T, and be experts and be proficient to make sure everyone in line from top to bottom is ready, and that we're doing everything we got to do, we have to do to make sure it works. Right now, what we did in the past did not work.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miles. Ms. Tompkins.
Sir?
Yes, I just want to say thank you for that great presentation. Glad to know that it is aligned with the Virginia Standards of Learning, 99.5%. That's very key,
right,
and very important. Also glad to know that you did do your research and went out and looked at other divisions in the state of Virginia that are using the program that has been successful. That is great information to us. And also, Mr. Miles, just want to share with you, we're under an MOU. And it is the superintendent's responsibility to make sure that she hire competent and capable staff to lead our programs that we have in place. And we truly believe that's what she have done. And that's why we support when she bring names before us of individuals to run departments or programs, because she truly believes that her staff is going to guide us, our school division, in the right direction and going to do what's best for our kids. So we support her decisions on whoever she bring in here. I mean, it may have failed in the past, but we believe that she have the right people in place right now to move forward. Mr. Lundy?
I just want to share one thing. We didn't have a phonetic program. The last program we had was Open Court. And we used that program for special ed, and strategies worked. Kids learned to read. It was a plus. This does work. This definitely does work. And the inequity and inequality of other folks pulled it away from our kids because they were learning to read. So we need to jump on this. We support this, and we're going forward. And just like you said, we're going to do a great job. And so thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else? Back to Dr. Petrie Martin. Thank you, Ms. Tompkins. We appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Petrie Martin, did you want
Somebody's calling you.
official
Okay.
request?
Well, it is a staff report this evening. And so if we were to move it forward for approval, we could do that this evening, or it would come back to the board for formal approval on March 17th.
I would say, Dr. Petrie, I mean, I don't have a problem with it if it's okay with the board. I would say that we wait and move that to action, if we're going to move to action, after public comment. Because I want to hurry up. I just want to hurry up. I don't know if we have staff on here that want to say something. I just want to hear comments before we vote on it.
We have to do that.
Yeah. And we're fine if it goes till March 17th, because we actually thought it would go until March 17th as well.
Okay. You all okay with that? To
Yes.
wait and hear what they have to say.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Where are we? Are we coming to your budget, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, we on E, Dr. Petrie Martin.
So to our community as well as our staff, I know we have many staff members on with us, but of course to our board. This is one of the most important conversations we have all year. And it is the discussion of the fiscal year proposed budget. We know that we start this process a few months before we have the first look at it with our board. We also know that we will have additional conversations about what is being proposed this evening. But I will tell you that the sentiment that has been shared by Mr. Lundy and others is running through this budget. And it is, we need funding to give our staff the pay that would make them want to work in Petersburg City Public Schools and make them want to stay in Petersburg City Public Schools. And I agree, we can bring all the programs in the world, but if we can't sustain our staff, it's not going to work. So I say that as an opening comment to just set the tone for this discussion and where we need to go with this discussion. So we started this process back in December. We always bring a group together where we invite central office staff, school level staff. We also invite parents, community partners to come together and begin a discussion regarding the budget. We've had a couple of meetings so far. We started December 15th. We had another meeting on January 20th. Please go to the next slide. Since I've been here, which this is only the second budget that I am presenting to you all since I have been here, I have made a request to the city of Petersburg for a full $11 million. And as we go through this presentation, you will see why. Once again, I'm going to make an ask for the full $11 million. Now, we have not received a full $11 million since 2015. In 2015, we received 11.6 million. In 2016, we received 10.5 million. Since 2016, we have been receiving less than that 11 million requests and less than 10.5 million. Also, as we go through this presentation, you will see that the numbers for average daily membership are K through 12. So our pre-K numbers are not included in this because it is a different funding source. So I wanted to add that as well. The other thing that I will be very presumptuous in saying, as we go through the presentation, our goal is to always have a full $11 million from the city. When we get to slide 18 of this presentation, you will see the significant increase we could give our staff if we are able to get the full 11 million that we requested last year, and then what we are requesting again for this year. Also, we know that the city of Petersburg has recently had an unassigned fund balance of $8 million for the city of Petersburg, which means the city of Petersburg has reached a point in which they could fulfill this request. I will be presumptuous in saying that at this time. Go to the next slide. We always want to remind our community and our board that we have some state code requirements that we are fulfilling and going through this process. We know that on or before the first day of April each year, we have to submit to the governing body, and in this case, it is going to be the city of Petersburg, an estimate of the amount of money needed during the next fiscal year, which will be fiscal year 22. We are going to have a public hearing to discuss this budget more on March 17th, and then we'll also bring additional information to you on March 17th as well. If you go to the next slide, you will see that it is my duty, but we have a very capable team who has joined me in this process to prepare this budget. And again, it is a high-level proposal, and we do intend to bring additional information to you on March 17th. So right now it is an estimate of the amount of money that we would need to function for fiscal year 22. Next slide. So as I said earlier, I feel that we have incredibly capable staff. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. John Mayo, who is our Deputy Superintendent, and he will share with you what has been the city transfer going back as far as 2011, so we can have that historical perspective to get us to today. Dr. Mayo?
Thank you, Dr. Peter Martin. Good evening, Chairman Pritchard, Vice Chairman Pierce, members of the board, again, Madam Superintendent, members of the community. This slide here provides a little history on the city transfer for the last 10 years. And this is really good information specifically for our new board members, since this provides transfers from fiscal year 2011 to 2021. The budget for the school division is derived from federal, state, and local sources. During the last 10 years, amounts budgeted and actual funds provided range from a high of 11.6 million to a low of 7.9 million. Please note columns 3 and 4, where in some cases, the amount budgeted ended up being less. While the city can reduce the actual amount provided to the locality, they are obligated to fund the locality based on required local effort, which for fiscal year 2022 is $9.7 million. As noted on slide 2, we have budgeted for the city providing $10 million. And as Dr. Peach Martin has mentioned, she'll be asking for $11 million, which has been the case for the last 2 years, wherein we've been provided $10 million. Next slide, please. When we look at how Petersburg fares with neighboring school divisions regarding local costs per student, we are the lowest in the Tri-Cities area, and all Tri-Cities are under the state average with the exception of Colonial Heights. And pretty much what that means is out of the amount of money that the city is providing to us, this is the local share of the local, state, and federal that makes up the per pupil costs for each student. Next slide, please. As mentioned on slide 5, each governing body is required to provide a specific amount of funding to the school division through required local effort, which would have to be at least $9.7 million from the city of Petersburg. The $10 million transfer from the city is enough to cover. However, if our ADM increases during the year, that required local effort would also have to increase. Next slide, please. One of the factors that drives funding at the state level includes student membership on September 30th of each school year. As you can see, we have a steady decline since 2004, with 2020 through 2022 remaining pretty flat or constant. Depending upon enrollment projections and March 31st average daily membership, state funding can fluctuate up or down for a locality. Next slide, please. The state's contribution to a local school division's budget is tied to its average daily membership, which we get on March 31st. From viewing this slide, one can see a steady decline of 28% in membership over the last 18 years. Projecting enrollment and actual enrollment is crucial for any school division because it also can impact funding the locality will receive. For example, we are projecting in grades K through 12, 3,733 students for fiscal year 2022, which equates to $8,814 per pupil. In the event we have fewer students, we will receive less funding. And if we have more students, of course, we will receive increased funding. So for example, if we had 10 additional students, we would gain approximately a little over $80,000 additional dollars to our operating budget. Whereas if we lost 10 students, we would have to come up with about close to $80,000 or so, which would be deducted from the funding we will receive. Projections are calculated by looking at current enrollment in grades K through 11, as well as trend data over the years at each grade level. And the reason we're looking at K through 11 is because your kindergartners will become first graders, and then your 11th graders will become your 12th graders. And we look at our birth rates as well as trend data over the years to calculate what kindergarten numbers should look like. So this is pretty much how we are able to determine and project what our membership spot on over the years. Comparing fiscal year 19 to 20, we did see an increase, as well as from 20 to 21, where we are this year. We saw an increase in our actual membership, which resulted in additional funding coming from the state. At this time, Ms. Holloway will share additional information on revenues and expenditures for the proposed fiscal year 22 budget.
Good evening, Chairman Pritchett, Co-Chair Pierce, school board members, and Dr. Petrie Martin. This slide 10 shows a little bit of information that they've already provided. As Dr. Mayo said, we are basing our March 31st, 2022 ADM to be 3,733, which is what we built the budget on. Composite index has not changed from last year. It is still at 0.2442. And composite index, just to give new people and people listening a little bit of idea of what that is, that's what the state calls the ability to pay of a local government's ability to pay. And it's a very convoluted calculation that they do. The General Assembly establishes the composite index formula in the Appropriation Act, and they use 3 indicators to estimate that. They use the true value of the real estate in the locality. They use Virginia's adjusted gross income in the locality and the taxable retail sales in the locality. And then they do some other calculations where they weight each one of those at 50%, 40%, 10%, and then they look at local population. So they come up with that number for each district on the ability to pay. State revenue and state sales tax reflect in this budget, as of right now, the governor's introduced amendments that he put out in December. As we go through this budget process and the General Assembly meets, the Senate recommends different things, the House recommends different things, and then they come back together to the governor, and then he makes his final decisions. So everything that we've built this budget on right now is on the governor's introduced budget. The RS rates this year are not changing because we're in the second year of a biennium, so they stay the same as they did last year. And then just a little bit of history for fiscal year 21, the year that we're in right now, we based our ADM on 3,764 students, which is about 30 students higher than we are projecting for 2022. While some state funding sources are increasing in the governor's introduced budget, basic aid, at-risk, and others, those are increasing, but others are decreasing, like the money they give us for benefits. Sales tax is going down. I'm sure that has to do with the virus, and K3 reduction. Those items in his calculation are going down. Next slide, please. This chart shows our fiscal year 21 adopted compared to our fiscal year 22 proposed. We have made some adjustments in our local revenue because we try to base local revenue on actuals for the year before. So we're bringing in less local revenue at this time. E-rate is going down. That's based on history as well. Sales tax is projected to go down about $350,000, while other state revenue is projected to go up $1.6 million. We left federal in the operating fund the same. That is federal money that we get for our JROTC program at the high school. And then the city transfer, we've left it at $10 million. I know we may go back and ask the city for additional. They've indicated to me they're going to stay at 10, but so we built the budget on 10 as of right now. The food service budget is just slightly based on history. That could go back up when all the kids are back in school and things turn around a little bit. And then grants have gone down, mostly because grants like SIG, we had built a SIG grant into the budget for 21 and some other grants that we ended up not applying for. So we left those out of 22. If we go back and apply for those, we would always increase the appropriation next year for those. So overall, for all funds, we are projected that our revenue would go up $133,588. Next slide, please. This chart just shows each fund and what makes up the expenditures in each fund. As you can see, salaries are the biggest percentage in the operating fund and the grants fund. Salaries in the operating fund are right at 63%, benefits at 24.11%, Purchase services at 4.73%. And then other would be things like utilities, cell phones, rental of copiers, those kind of things is only 3.66%. And then supplies is 4.4%. And we have a very small amount of capital built into the budget at 0.09%. Capital would be any items that cost over $5,000 each. So that we call that capital. Food service fund, salaries are at 26.39%, benefits at 10.3%, because a lot of those people are part-time, so the benefits would be a lot less than what you would see in the operating fund. Services are at 0.86%, other 4.5%, and then, of course, the bulk of the food service budget is food and supplies for the feeding the children lunch and breakfast, which is right at 58%. In the grants fund, salaries make up 52.33%, benefits 21.5%, services 10.22%, other 3.11%, supplies 9.13%, and then a little bit of capital as well built into the grants fund at 3.72%. So as you can see, the bulk of our budget is spent on salaries and benefits. Next slide, please. This is a similar chart. It breaks down the revenues for all funds. So as you can see, looking at the fiscal year 22 amount of the $56,944 that we're projecting, $31.5 million come from the state. Federal and the operating fund is very small, like we said before, $47,000. The city transfer makes up 17.5% of our budget. Food service makes up about 5%, a little over 5%. Grants is 13.2%. Local fees is 0.14%. E-rate is at 0.4%. And sales tax makes up 8.12% in the revenues. Next slide, please. Next slide breaks down the operating fund a little bit better so you can see each appropriation category. Appropriation categories in a school budget are your instruction, your administration, attendance and health, transportation, operations and maintenance, and technology. So this graph here shows you each appropriation category and what percentage is budgeted and how it's budgeted. And as you can see, instruction is, of course, our big priority, and it is 73% of our 2022 budget. I won't read you all those numbers. Next slide, please. Okay, when breaking down the operating fund, as we said, we're projected to get almost $46.5 million for all revenues in the operating fund. The required expenditures that we have are, like we said before, positions and benefits. Not any new positions, they're going to be listed separately, but that $37,172,000 make up $585.6 with benefits. In this budget, we are required by the governor's proposed budget to add some extra guidance counselors. Last year we put those in and then the rule changed and we had to cut those out, but this year we have to do that again. So we have to pick up 2 additional school counselors, and they are actually going to be split over the elementary schools. The two new counselors will be shared with the elementary schools, and that will help us meet our SOQ requirements. Department and school operating budgets, that is the amount that makes up what each department and each school has for buying supplies, textbooks, everything that they need in their department, utilities, all of that is included in that $7.6 million. Our health insurance advisors have told us to project a slight increase in health insurance. We've added in a 5% increase, which makes up about $184,000. And then we have a Claude Moore grant. And as written in the grant, we have to provide the cost of 2 CTE teachers, half of 2 CTE teachers for the health and medical programming program that they have at the high school. So that's $65,000. So after you take all of those out, they total $45,222,735. You take those out and you have a balance, and that's what we would be using to do any initiatives and extra positions and that kind of thing, which are shown on the next slide. I know it's kind of small. I was trying to fit it all on one page. Okay. In this budget, the governor is providing, in his budget, they're providing $337,000 towards a 2% increase. If we don't provide an increase, we don't get that revenue. We have actually increased to be $666,234, which includes the benefits on that increase. There were several requests to increase some contract lengths for some of our employees. I've listed them all there. I won't read them all to you, but they total about $64,000. That's changing people from 11-month to 12-month or 10.5-month to 11-month as needed in those departments. We have added an additional FTE for a carpenter. We need 2 carpenters. In this budget right now, we can afford to do 1. So we've added 1 to help facilities a little bit. They maintain 972,000 square feet of building space. We currently only have 2 carpenters, so adding 1 more would be a tremendous help in keeping the day-to-day operations of our aging buildings running smoothly. We've added an additional alternative teacher to be a middle school alternative teacher to help with the growing needs in our alternative program and to help decrease the dropout rate. We have added a gifted coordinator. In trying to grow our gifted program, we need someone who can coordinate all of the gifted functions in the school district. We've asked for an additional speech pathologist for the special ed department. They are asking for that because of the current number of caseloads that they have and the services that are provided. DOE recommends fewer cases per pathologist, would allow us to meet their recommendations. We have added an additional truancy case manager. Additional position is needed due to the increase in attendance issues and will help provide intervention. That's another $65,000. And then we've got a small fund balance that we like to hold on to help with any unseen or unbudgeted items that come up later, and that's $192,000. So all of those added together would use up the rest of the balance left from the revenue that we've projected. And then Dr. Mayo is going to pick back up with slide 17.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, thank you. As noted on slide 16, one of the initiatives we are exploring involves compensation. And the superintendent also mentioned it at the beginning of this presentation, the importance of being able to not only retain our employees, but also to recruit new talent to come into Petersburg as well. So this slide here is pretty eye-opening, and it gives just the Region 1 starting salaries, and this is all based upon fiscal year 2021, the one we're in right now. And as you can see where we rank, we're ranking number 6 out of the 15 school divisions. However, some school systems have already started presenting their budgets. They've been doing it since January. So of course, with some of the information that you'll see on the next slide, you're going to, there have been some conversations after the development of this presentation, wherein there could be some additional increases at the state level. So we're waiting to use some of the calculation tools in order to troubleshoot and find out what some of those increases could be for us. But as you can see, if the proposed salary increases take place in some of the other localities, instead of being ranked number 6, we will definitely go down in the ranking when it comes to schools just in the Region 1. And this is just a start when we're looking at our starting salaries, because we also have to take a look at where we stand once an employee gets 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, just throughout their career, so that we are able to attract and then retain our employees, which is definitely part of our goal as a school system, not only to attract employees, but also to retain them. And we were able to do that this past school year by increasing our retention rate, and we'll like to continue to increase our retention rate. But of course, salaries will be something that's going to be important. So with the additional funding coming from the city, if we could get an additional $1 million, that would definitely assist us and help us in being able to be more creative with our compensation strategy moving forward, and not only being able to possibly do an increase, but also do a step, which is something that we have not been able to do in quite some time as well. So at this time, I'll let Ms. Holloway continue, and she will kind of share some of the information I just kind of provided very high level as well on the next 2 slides.
Thank you, Dr. Mayo. Okay, just some additional information regarding salaries. In this budget, we have something called lapse salaries. I'm not sure if everybody knows what that is, but lapse salaries is a negative number that you put into your budget that allows for when higher paid teachers retire and are replaced with lower paid teachers. There's a negative that helps make up and helps you balance your budget. We've had it in here every year. Really, 1% is probably the lowest that we've had, which is a good thing. I think a couple of years ago, we were up like at 3%, which is kind of high. So we've been able to keep that number down, which is good. Like I said before, this proposed financial plan is based on the governor's proposed budget, and it is subject to revisions as it is every year when he makes his final recommendations. As I said before, DOE is providing in this calculation $337,000 toward a 2% pay increase. They actually called it a bonus, but I contacted them and asked them if we were to give a 2% raise and not a bonus, would it still qualify? And they assured me that it would. So if we don't give a salary increase, our revenue would be decreased by the $337,000. If we receive the additional $1 million that we've asked from the city, we would be able to provide a 4% increase to our staff, which would make us a lot more comparable to surrounding districts. We calculated the cost of a 1.5, step increase above the 2% pay increase that we've already calculated. That would be another $510,000. In order to provide a step increase, we would need to eliminate some of the initiatives that we've built into the budget. And I just gave a quick history of pay increases. In 18, we gave a 2%. In 19, we gave a 2%. In 20, we gave 3%. And then in the current year that we're in now, we did not provide any salary increases at all. Next slide, please. Then after we put this PowerPoint together for you all, there was an article that came out in the Richmond Times-Dispatch online that said that they were negotiating between the House and Senate, giving a 5% salary increase. And it had been proposed, and it's being reviewed under the House rules. The General Assembly completed their work this past weekend. We do not have a final number from them yet. It has gone back to the governor, and he will review everything and make his final determinations on what the budget will actually be. The updated calculation tool that the calc tool that we use was not out there yet. But then after we did this presentation, they did come out with the Senate's version and the House's version. So I have those numbers to go over with you, but they are not part of this presentation. But I do have a chart that I can just kind of read to you all. And all these revisions will be brought to you back to you on March 17th for approval and adoption. Like I said, in the proposed budget for the governor right now, we've built in a 2% increase. They're giving us $337,000 toward that increase, but the increase actually costs $666,000, which means we have to come up with about $300,000 of local money to cover, not local money, but in our budget, we have to come up with about 300 and some thousand to make that happen. The state Senate version actually provides us with $745,000 more in state revenue because it provides for a 5% increase. But they only give us $600,000 toward that increase, and a 5% increase would cost Petersburg Public Schools almost $1.7 million. So the difference between the 2% and the 5% is right at $1 million. If they're giving us an additional $745,000, we still need $256,000. We have, like I said, we have a fund balance that we've built in right now that's right at $193,000. So we would have to cut maybe one of the initiatives to the tune of about $63,000 to make that happen. In the House version, they're giving us an additional $943,000, which provides for a 5% increase as well. And like I said, a 5% increase costs us $1.668 million. And so the difference between the 5% and the 2% is still the $1 million, but the additional revenue of $943,000 would leave us only having to cover $58,000, which we could also take out of fund balances without cutting any initiatives at all. So I'm not sure what decision will be made and which step they'll take, but those are the things that we will be bringing back to you for adoption once we have an updated calculation tool to use. We will take any questions.
Thank you, thank you, Ms. Holloway.
Yes, sir.
We're going to start. I'll start in the back this time. Mr. Dance, any questions?
Yes, one question. As far as the lawn care, we still going to continue to have a contract to do that, or we going to do that?
No, sir. We have our own people doing that now.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Mr. Miles.
Right now, you gave us information on a 5% increase, a 2% increase. What do you what are you recommended that we have in the budget?
Well, I'm recommending with the governor's proposed a 2% only. That's all we can afford.
Okay, thank you.
But when these things change, hopefully we will be able to come back and recommend a higher number than that.
Okay.
Ms. Wynn, any questions? Mr. Pierce. Okay. Mr. Long. Mr. Lundy.
Yes. Ms. Holloway.
Yes, sir.
Can you turn to that slide just before salaries, when you start talking about salaries? Just again. Okay, right there.
The initiatives?
Right there, yes.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Petrie Martin, do you think, and with the will of the board, do you think we can look at that area again? And the reason I said, because there's some things I could speak on, but I won't do that publicly. But I just wonder, can we look at it, because there's some programs and all in there that I don't know about the rest of the board, but I haven't seen come to. Right. And I wonder about our monies in those areas. And I just want to say, can we look at it? That's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. These were recommendations that staff gave to us, and we went ahead and included it. But in all honesty, as a collective group, pay increases are most important right now. So we brought it all to you, but we want to be very clear. Our pay increases are most critical.
Well, and that's why I'm asking you to look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Now, everybody in here is I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Everybody in here is my friend, but when it comes to business, then it's business. And we're asking for monies, and we've had teachers there. We've done a lot of different things. But when you have people like your staff, Ms. Tompkins and all of them, they can paint an infrastructure picture that would have to make anybody with good common sense look at what our needs are. And we have various things that we can share with the city, where you can put up fines for trash in the street. We have cars in the front yard. We have speeding in the neighborhood. We have so many things that can go towards monies in our city to help our children, for those people who are so concerned about our reading and what levels, the third grade levels, that we can't get past. But we can get past them, but we need some money. And business is business. And that's why I hope that you all could look at this and these initiatives, because I see some things in those initiatives that I feel could be adjusted. And thank you.
Yeah, and of course, our hope is that you all would continue to give us feedback on this. We did a budget here based on a 2% increase at $10 million, but that is not our preference. Okay, I want to be clear. Our preference would be to have 11 million given to us by the city, and then we could increase our pay for our staff. But we did present you something on 10 million simply because that is what was told to us would be given to us. But I think what I'm saying is that I would love support and us all pushing collectively for more. And I just had to say that one more time to get it off my chest. So,
and Dr. Petrie-Martin, the last thing is that we have one senator, and I respect him so much for him, but every time we go in that General Assembly, go to those meetings, they always ask us, well, what does your local government have? How can you match? And that's where we get crushed, because there are plenty of people who need. And so we just need some help. We just need to be direct and honest about it. Our teachers deserve it. We can't not keep provisional teachers all of the time. We cannot keep looking for teachers all of the time. And we have good people. We need to try to keep our good people. So thank you all.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Miles.
They have some good items in this budget that we probably need to go back and take a look at, especially with the operating expenses for the people that we're bringing in, the alternative teacher, gifted coordinator, speech pathologist. What Mr. Lundy talked about, the reading, and what Miss Crystal Thompson presented, we need to go wholeheartedly focusing on speech pathologists and where we had those two counselors and that alternative teacher in the middle school to keep the dropout rate. The way we're going to reduce that dropout rate is getting speech pathologists and reading coordinators in each one of those middle schools. We need to take those two counselors. We need speech pathologists in every school. These kids that have a problem, and we need to make sure they get out to a good start. When I started school, I had to go to a speech pathologist in kindergarten and all the way through the first grade, and it was corrected. And so the thing is, I know how important that is. That alternative teacher to reduce dropout rate in middle school, we'd already failed them by the time they got to middle school. So we need to look at those, go back and look at those. We might need 4 speech pathologists, 1 for each school, instead of bringing in a counselor and those things. So those are some of the things that we need to take a look at, because we really need to address that reading. And it's great to have everything. Sometimes you can't get everything, so we might need to load up in the reading and give Miss Crystal Thompson the support with those speech pathologists in one school. You work somebody to death with running back and forth, but we need it every day.
You might want to explain. You might want to explain the SOQ to him. Yeah.
Self here. So some of the things that we have on the list are required by the standards of quality through the DOE. So things like school counselors, we are required to have those based on the SOQ number. The speech pathologists that we are looking at here would be in addition to what we currently have. And of course, the speech caseload would dictate that. And in all honesty, all of the initiatives that were brought to us exceeded this list. Okay.
Okay, so what they put, so to meet it, we need to hire these people to meet the minimum.
Pretty much at this point, especially when you look at speech pathologists, because the state has a recommended number of students per speech pathologist. So this would at least help us get to the recommendation of the state. You know, I often will say we don't have a ton of money to work with.
I understand.
Because what we're getting locally is, as you can tell from the chart, is not equal to what other locales are given their school divisions. So we don't have a ton of money to work with. So what we brought to you was a narrowed down list of initiatives, but I want to say it again. Our staff getting increases is our focus. And we are offering 2%, but we would love to give them a 4%. And if the 5% goes through, then that puts us at a different conversation, to be real honest with you. So.
Thank you.
And I know I keep repeating that, but it's important to me to say the staff needs the increase. So.
And Dr. Petrie-Martin, I only have one on the list, that the same list that Mr. Miles that we're looking at.
Okay.
On the truancy case manager, I see we want to add another one, but I believe don't we have a vacancy, and it's been vacant for a while right now?
I think we do. It is the high school one because we had one that we had hired and the person did leave. But I think we all know attendance is a big issue for us in Petersburg. That's why we talked about it in Innovate 2022. So we did keep an additional one on the list because we think if we can hire the ones that we have plus one, I think it would help us. Also, our court system has been working very closely with us. And we've seen some decline, but we have serious truancy issues in the city of Petersburg. Serious truancy issues.
And that's going to go back to my next one. It would come under new business, but I was going to ask the board members, because you have put this truancy on here, when on the 17th meeting, if you could bring back to the board, could we get an update on what the attendance looked like and what the plan would be? You know, what has happened since the last time we talked with attendance, and what's going to happen if we do hire this extra truancy case manager? How would this person fit in with attendance?
And could we also do a truancy report?
Sure.
Because see, what I share with you is attendance. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because I want to just show you the full picture.
Are you all okay with that? That's
good.
Attendance and truancy?
Yes.
Yes,
So
that's good.
So is that was what
That's
you
on
got?
this list right here that you and Mr. Miles brought up, the list that showed the new positions. It's a truancy case manager here, and I was asking about it because we had one position that's not filled, and she said it's the high school position.
Right. And but I was just saying, I heard you ask that, but I can save it to a new business.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I just threw mine in there with this.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, because I think I didn't make myself clear, but and I didn't want to confuse Dr. Petrie Martin. But I was looking at our schools. When I looked at that initiative, I was looking at our schools. I wanted to look at our salaries. I wanted to look at our number of students in our alternative settings. I wanted to see, because we could have the best gifted reading school in the city. And I was trying to see why money's, in some of those things were going, that's all.
And we have, Mr. Lundy, I want to say, we have gotten a report like that before where each school, it showed, the finance director has given us a report where it shows each school what the salaries are being paid, the individuals, the positions, and the salaries that are being paid.
And we could give you that. It's a pretty lengthy.
I think that's what he's talking about.
Yeah,
School.
It's a lengthy report, but we can give you that as well.
Well, I don't want to work you to death.
It's okay.
I don't want to work you to death, but I just want us to see when we go asking for something, other people look at things and say what you're doing. I look at the number of students in a place. I look at the salary of the teachers in a place, and I try to see, do they match? Because sometimes you have to juggle things around and place programs in other buildings.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Miles.
I didn't see anything in the budget showing central office costs.
Yeah, and just to for everyone who's online, there's an additional document that is posted for this agenda item, and it does give you a breakdown per object code. So we do have some of that in that other document, Mr. Miles. It looks like that. It's posted. Oh, wait, where did it go? This document is also posted, Mr. Miles, and so it does give you some of that information. It doesn't break it down by person, but it does start to show you what's happening by object code. But we'll get you the individual report as well. But this is a good starting point.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I have one last question. I did not hear anything in our budget about it, but do we have any CARES funding that's going to be in the budget for next year? Because I didn't see any in this budget.
Yeah, that's in the grants portion, but Ms. Holloway, yes.
Okay.
In the proposed budget for grants, the CARES money is not in there because The CARES money that we received this year has already been appropriated. We are supposed to get another big pot of CARES money, and it will probably come at the very end of this school year and be appropriated into this school year and then carried over into next year. But I don't know what that number is yet. But we are definitely getting more CARES money. It's just not a budgeted item in the 22 budget because we've already appropriated everything we've gotten so far this year.
Okay. Okay. And the only reason I'm asking is because there is one school division that I know of. I don't know how they got the numbers, but they've already said that they're getting over $50 million in CARES funding. And I was just wondering,
oh my God,
why hadn't we heard anything?
I think the preliminary number that we received was around 10 million, I believe.
So there are preliminary reports of money that would come down, but we tend to not budget unless we actually have gotten the money. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we tend to not do that until we know for certain, but those are projections.
Okay.
I guess you're looking at 50 million. Are we getting 10 near 50? That was a good look.
I didn't say he or she.
I said that was a good look.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Holloway, Dr. Mayo, and Dr. Petrie-Martin. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will move to our public, we're on our public comment, right? Yeah, to our public comment period. At this time, each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. If you want to speak, you need to raise your hand in the chat. I would need you to give your name and your address. If you are a student, give the name of your school that you attend and which grade you're currently in. But for the adults, give your name and address. Put your hands up in the chat. Is it in the chat or in the Q&A?
It's in the participant box.
Raise hands.
No, it's in one of these. I saw somebody hand up in one of these.
Tamara Pollard.
Okay, it's in the participant. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Under attendee.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm on the other one. Okay. Miss Tamara Pollard is our first speaker. Miss Pollard. Did she put a hand up by mistake? It went away. Okay, this is our public comment period. Is there anyone who would like to speak? Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to go on to number 6, our action item, Dr. Petrie-Martin, 6A.
So at this time, we definitely want to recognize many of our essential workers who have been working to ensure that our buildings have been operating throughout this pandemic. We just think it's critical to acknowledge them and for all the hard work that they have been doing to keep us afloat during this pandemic. So I do have a proclamation that reads, recognition of Petersburg City Public Schools essential workers. Whereas on March 13th, 2020, Petersburg City Public Schools and many schools across this nation closed school buildings to begin the journey of online learning in their homes due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas essential workers in the Petersburg City Public Schools continue doing their jobs on the front lines, helping to ensure the health, well-being, and safety of our school students, staff, and families. And whereas without compromising access to basic life necessities, societies need certain individuals with critical jobs to continue showing up to work, even in the face of dangerous situations. And whereas these individuals on the front lines have been putting their own lives at risk for the betterment of our student, staff, and community, and are thus called our Petersburg Unsung Heroes of 2020-21. And whereas their extra efforts to drive to communities, to provide ongoing food security for students, to make home visits, to follow up on student attendance and students' well-being, and whereas we honor and express our gratitude to these individuals who continue to make sacrifices and collaborate with school officials for the safe reopening of our schools for students, staff, and the community. Now, therefore, the Petersburg City School Board and Superintendent do hereby acknowledge and recognize all Petersburg City Public Schools essential workers who have served as our heroes during the COVID-19 pandemic on this third day of March 2021. And I do call this observance to the attention of all of our citizens. And just to clarify, all of our essential workers during this pandemic have been our maintenance staff, custodian staff, our bus drivers, our bus aides, our school nutrition staff, our school security officers, our school-based clerical staff, and our school-based nurses, our tech support, our student support specialist, and our residency compliance officer. They have continued to go out into the community nonstop, even during this pandemic. So thank them. So we ask that this proclamation be approved.
Okay, you heard the superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion? Moved by Ms. Long. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Nguyen, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Petrie-Martin, we'll move to 6B.
So the next item is that we are bringing back some policies for approval that we discussed during the last school board meeting. And so I'll turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Petrie-Martin, Chair Pritchett, Vice Chair Pierce, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen. There are, while it has 3 items, the first 2 are mirror regulations to our public participation at school board meetings, and the recommendation has been that both these regulations be deleted and for the board to operate with a protocol for public comment that would be made available on the board agenda if the board so decides to do so. But the regulation, and I will share with you that we just recently received the updated policies from VSBA for February 2021, and the line regarding regulations has been deleted. So this is perfect timing for us as a school division to make the adjustment and delete the regulations, and the board can put in place a protocol for public comment that they can add to, delete, or change as determined. The next item is school closings, and this policy was revised to just identify how the school division will communicate school closings or delays due to adverse weather conditions or other emergencies, so that it adds some specificity to the policy. And so these were presented at the last meeting, and they're before the board for action this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Any questions from board members? You've heard. And I know you've seen a little, you all have seen how we have to redesign the agenda, and part of that public comment, also the public comment period, the new policy that we've written, or the regulation that we've written, Ms. Barrios will be reading the part for the public to comment, and we're going to start encouraging the public to call her and to sign up, rather than sitting here waiting for people to raise their hand. If we have people already on the list and we know they're on here, then I can call on them for them to speak. Because I see that the young lady sent a message to say that she was knocked offline, but I don't see her back on here. I asked her to raise her hand. But Dr. Petrie-Martin, what is your recommendation?
We do ask that the 2 regulations and provide policy.
Okay, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion to accept?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Lundy, second by Mr. Pierce. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
I do not see Miss Pollard back. Is she still on here?
I don't see her hand up.
Miss Pollard, I know she can hear us. She said she was knocked off when she tried to come on to speak. Yeah, she's still on there. Yeah, but we'll go ahead. Yeah, she's on. Oh, she did raise it. Okay. You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself. Does she have to unmute or you have to unmute her? You have to unmute yourself. Okay, can you hear us? Miss Pollard?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, State your name
Can
and
you hear
address.
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Mara Pollard. I don't know why my address is important, but I'm in Petersburg, and I just recently moved back to Petersburg. But my issue is
it's a part of our policy, ma'am. Either you can give your ward, or you can give your ward or your address. It's in our policy.
3rd Ward.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 3rd Ward.
Okay, go ahead.
But my issue is the fact that
She done got kicked off again. So you say you can see her. Okay, let me go. What's next? Okay, our information items. Okay. Do not forget, board members, on Friday, those who are able to attend Friday at 1:00 p.m. Senator Morrissey, yeah, they had to change it. He'll be at 1:00 p.m. at Petersburg High for the tour. And then we'll go to the library to speak with him. And I know Dr. Petrie Martin and Dr. Mayo, I don't know, are you still coming? I know you had that other meeting, but okay. Okay. So that's Friday. Then our next board meeting is on the 17th. Okay. Committee reports. Any updates on committee reports? I think you attached something, Mr. Dance, didn't you? Committee reports, any updates?
At the governor's school, well, good evening again, everybody. At the governor's school, we appointed an interim director, a lady from Colonial Heights. And I can't think of her name right now, but anyway, we're still looking for a director to take Mr. Auburn's place.
So y'all didn't appoint the current assistant director?
No, we didn't.
Okay. Okay. And at Maggie Walker, just an update at Maggie Walker, we had our meeting Thursday, and Dinwiddie is deciding to come and bring students to Maggie Walker. So they will start next year. They will start in September transporting students to Maggie Walker.
Code RVA, Ms. Barrios put on the web, I'm sure she shared the information I actually share with you all about being able to go in and look at some of the work that the students had done at Code RVA. Sure, everybody might not have gotten a chance to do it. Also, the students at Code RVA recognized the board for School Board Week. And they did videos.
That's what it was. Okay.
Did videos telling the importance of Code RVA and how they felt and the comfortableness of being able to work independently. They were very good. They gave some very good videos.
Okay, anyone else? Committee report. Mr. Miles.
Yeah, at the Science Math Innovation Center, we're having a science fair next month, and I volunteered to be one of the judges to evaluate the projects. And basically just looking forward to doing that.
Now, is the fair just our students or different schools?
It's regional.
Regional. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And I did want you all to know I did try to get on for the special ed meeting, but I didn't get on. I got kicked off. But I did try to get on. So I'll try. Well, the next one is what? April, I believe it is. I'll try again.
Okay, we'll move next to D, new business from board members.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Pierce.
Just a couple of 2 or 3 things. The first, hopefully in the future, well, the board can have some discussion regarding or wrapped around VSBA training and budgeting. Maybe we can have a closed session, because I know that would be a discussion if it's the will of the board, a discussion with the board with regarding to VSBA training and budgeting. The concern is that we have training. VSBA does, we have training. The concern is the amount of money that we pay into training, and it's virtual. Maybe we can discuss something with regards to tweaking those costs, because I'm not comfortable with the fact that we're paying the amount of money that we're paying into training and not getting it. And I'll use one particular event. I'll call it an event where the training was supposed to have been 6 hours, and it was 1 hour for $200. So I think it might be to our benefit to just sit down, have a discussion, because all of us are required to have the training. And I don't want to beat it up, but some of the training, when I say the training is there for us. I won't say required to have it, but the training is there for us. And the chair is probably smiling because he knows I was going to come out with it sooner or later. And here we are paying the amount, and it's expensive. It's very expensive. The cost that we pay into our training is very expensive. And here we have an event that should have lasted from 9 to 2, and it lasted from 9 to 10:30 at a cost of $200
per person. Right?
This is not new. This is not something that's new. It's just wrapped around the pandemic. And if I'm going to pay you the amount of money that I'm paying you for the training of the year, we should be able to have some kind of discussion and maybe tweak the cost a bit. So, okay, I've got a virtual training. You're going to send me one of your persons, or you're going to do the training for, supposed to last a certain amount of time. Training is cut short, hour and a half, but yet you still got my $175. So I think at some point, if it's the will of the board, we can sit down and maybe have some discussion wrapped around that. Because it is a budget line item for our training, and it's a budget line item for VSBA costs. And
I'm glad you brought that up. I hadn't gotten there yet.
Yes, sir.
But Ms. Barrios has listed all of the free trainings on here. Of course, y'all know we have free, and you do get points for those. But there are also ones with costs. And I asked Ms. Rios to put that on there, because some of you, well, you all know who you are. You call Ms. Barrios to sign up for a class where the money may not be on the line item, and we didn't know. So what happens is she have to submit it to Debbie, and I have to sign off on it. So I asked her to put the trainings on here, because when we get to the trainings and we get to new business from board members, we need to say in front of each other what training we would like to attend, so she would know if there's anything that she made that I need to stop at her office and sign off on. So please, in the future, let's not call her no more and schedule one-on-one trainings, because it happened this time where the monies were not in the
Not
budget.
there.
Not there. She had to go and have it transferred to the line item. And yes, Mr. Pierce, that the trainers, I mean, what you heard me say all the time, the trainers are expensive. I've been on the board for a while. I go to the free ones, and I share with you also. All that money we give them, all we're getting is a piece of paper and a pen. And I don't even know where all the pens are, and I don't know where all the certificates are. So that's why I stopped signing up for all those $200 and $175 classes.
Mm. Well, that
I signed up for the required ones that I know that it's going to go to the Virginia Department of Education.
Right. I just wanted to say this, and I'm gonna let it go. You know, I think at some point, you know, you need to be called out. You know, it's not that I don't have anything against VSBA, but at some point, somebody's got to call it out. Now, you know, like I said, I don't believe in beating a dead horse. I realize that we get certain credits for the amount of training that we get, but we have the right to say something when we know that we've got to pay for this. And I'm gonna leave it at that. And thank you, Mr. J.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you,
Mr. London.
Yes, sir.
I was calling on Ms. Barrios because of the fact that we had some trainings that we signed up for, but we didn't get, like number 1, 2. What was it, Ms. Barrios, like 1 and 2? Or was it 1?
It was a series of 4 free webinars.
Right.
And I've heard a couple of you say they did not remember seeing number 1.
Right, it didn't come on.
No. There was a communication whereby the board members should have been able to access all of the series. And I'll go back and research that to make sure 1 is included and maybe resend that.
Okay.
The link provided by.
And I think you did share that you would do that. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. And may I share something, Mr. Pritchett, with your permission? Though it does not address all of the concerns, of course, there are occasions where if the board or numbers of board members wish to assemble physically, much the way you maybe are now, and wanted to participate in VSBA training, the $175 cost, for example, applies to the connection. So if you had 1 or 2 or all board members who wanted to participate, it would be covered. The cost could be covered as one charge. However, I'm not sure from the VSBA standpoint, in order to get your board academy points, whether or not they would likely require you to have a single connection per person, much the same way you would each be paying a separate, if you all went to the annual convention, you'd each be paying a separate fee or separate cost. So that's a thought. If the training is the focus, that could be done and be cost efficient in that manner as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Ms. Barrios, could you call tomorrow and find out if that is true? That if we all met at one time and received the training, would we all get credit?
Absolutely. I'll be glad to.
But you don't want to hold that stipulation on it.
No, I leave all of the new training up to the new board members. I'm seasoned, so I'm not, like I said, I'm not worried about my certificate or pin anymore.
I tell you, that's gone. you gone. And I know I'm gone. And you need some extra folders. I thought, oh,
You know, okay.
This comment was related to Dr. Petrie Martin and the rest of the staff. I do appreciate the fact that the fence is finally up in front of the operations center after a set amount of the last comment was about signage, and I think we had a little bit of a conversation about signage on all of the Petersburg City Public Schools vehicles. There should be signage on all vehicles.
And we're following up on the discussion that we had just to ensure the vehicle you saw was ours, but we agree with signage. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And we're happy with the fence as well. We went through a couple of vendors, but we got there.
Yeah. Pass that along for me. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Dr. Petrie Martin, board members, we do have a meeting on March 22nd with City Council. That's a virtual meeting. Dr. Petrie Martin will be presenting her budget. And Mr. Lundy did touch on it a little bit, Dr. Petrie Martin. We know that one of the council members is going to bring up, reading. And Mr. Lundy did touch on it, and if you all heard him or not, but is it possible that at that meeting also you could bring Ms. Tompkins with you?
Absolutely. We were already prepared to do a reading presentation as well.
Okay, and she'll be doing that?
Yes. I mean, not this presentation. We have a different presentation, but yes, it's a discussion of reading.
Mr. Chair, but Dr. Petrie Martin, that presentation she gave was so important because you were climbing the hill.
Let's talk about moving forward
to the third grade. You get what I'm saying? And that's what, if somebody's trying to stop us, then let's give the evidence and how you make it better.
So we would include this plus additional information. We would definitely not leave this out. And to answer your question, you could approve it this evening, or we could approve it on March 17th. Either way, it could be ready for presentation.
And Mr. Pritchard, before you think on that, I want to say one more thing, Dr. Petrie Martin. Can we focus on that when we talk about it? I know you want to include stuff too, but can we get that focal point of understanding delivered?
Yeah, we will do our best. The only other thing we would include, we do want to make sure everyone realizes that we have a phonics-based program. We just think, the Fontes and Waterford together would be the best thing. So I just want to make it clear we wouldn't just present on Waterford. If approved, we would also discuss the phonics-based program as well. We would include both, but we'll lay it out. Yes, sir.
But that's what I'm talking about, that they understand what we're doing with phonics, and that phonics has been out of Petersburg for a while.
Yes, sir, it has. Yes, sir, it has.
Yeah. Thank you.
We get a question. Your mic not on. I don't hear you. I can't hear you.
Do they still use the third grade test scores to set up the jail cells?
I have not seen that in research lately, but there was research that said that a few years ago. I just haven't seen that lately.
Okay. All right.
There was a research study years ago that did refer to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, Dr. Petrie, I'm sorry. I had a list. I'm sorry, but if it's the will of the board, if you could we get an update on where we are with Pittman? I know we received the the grant. So what are our next steps?
So actually, we're going to bring a request for capital improvement on Pittman. So could we just do it then?
Yes. Right. On the 17th.
Oh, okay.
The 17th.
Okay. Not on the 17th. I think we're going to be ready in April.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, we were going to have to bring that anyway because we shared with you we needed to add some capital improvement to the Pittman building, so we were going to bring that anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And our last one, suspension. Remember, I told you, I called you about suspension policies. That was policies that the board voted on because of COVID, and all of the policies have not come back to us to put some policies back in place.
That will be on March 17th.
Okay.
Yes.
think I got everything. All right. So you said about the requisition. I'm sorry, because we were asking.
So you could approve it this evening, or you could certainly approve it on March 17th, and it would still make the March 22nd presentation. But I think all of us can agree this is something we need to do. So I will go with the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, we're talking about the reading program.
Yes,
the one that Ms. Tompkins presented tonight. The water.
Okay.
Was it Waterford?
yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Waterford.
Waterford.
Is that in the budget?
You remember she shared it's in the PALS budget.
That's the PALS funding.
Okay, so we're good with that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's vote on it.
It needs to be moved.
Okay.
Oh, I
needs to
move
be
that
moved.
we.
Needs to be
Mr.
moved
Chairman?
from. It needs to be moved from which number is it? Someone help me now. It's 4 what? 4C. 4C. And what's the next action item, Ms. Maria? Is it
Yeah, because it has 6E.
6E? Okay. You got that, Mr. Mal?
Yes, I move that we vote on it tonight.
No, You make a motion that we
Oh,
move.
I make a motion that we move it to from the action item to.
No, you make a motion that you move 6C.
Okay, I need to say it out.
Uh-huh.
I make a motion that we move 6C.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4. You're right. Thank you. 4C to 6E. Go ahead.
Okay. I make a motion to move 4E to 6C.
C. C, the 6E.
Okay, I make a motion to move 4C to 6D.
Second.
You said D. It's E.
You said D or E?
He said D.
I said D. Is it E?
E. It's E.
Okay,
E is an Edward.
Let's make it E like an Edward.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Miss Wynn. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we come to the action item, Dr. Peachy Martin, 6E, the action item.
So we do ask, oh, yes, I'm unmuted. We do ask for approval for moving forward with the procurement of the Waterford Reading Program.
Okay, you heard the superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Moved by Mr. Lundy. Is there a second? Ms. Long, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now we come to our adjournment. Mr. Lundy. Oh, y'all got more questions. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Can't hear you. Take yourself off mute. You will return your computer off? Right? We said be ye ready at all times.
He's already adjourned.
I'm right.
Well, I got to work. Dr. Peachy Martin, at the will of the board, I would like to know, because I don't understand, how are we able to show our work and the successes? And I say that because I'm worried about things we may need for those students are progressing on, seniors or whatever, and those that are where they are. I'm trying to figure out what tools are we going to use to measure this, to know what we've done. You know, I just feel like we're carrying it out, but I don't know what to look at. That achievement has been made or achievement hasn't been made, or what we need to do, because that's what I was trying to share with you, and hopefully in our meeting Friday, because we need some things.
Yeah. So, right now, because we have not had any SOL testing, and I'm not saying that's the end all be all of our work, but it is a serious indicator if kids are moving academically. We have not had that since the 2018-2019 school year. So what we have been relying on has been the PALS data, which some of that was shown this evening, and then the benchmark data. And I just shared the second quarter benchmark data with all of you of this past weekly update. So that's really what we have been using to guide our work last year, even though we ended in March. We were able to see where kids have moved from like tier 2, tier 3 to tier 1. And then this year we have used something similar. So if you're talking about academic performance, we have used benchmark data to help us guide that because we don't have any state data.
Okay, that's right. But I want us as a board collectively to know how to talk Friday when we say to people that you squash the year, you either squash the whole year or you decide how you're going to take care of it, because you don't want to come back and say, Dr. Petremont, you and Mr. Pritchard failed me and my child. You failed my child. You didn't tell me what was going to take place. So we got to be ready to say something to someone to put us on a level ground, because Mr. Pritchard made a statement and it was right. We show the data, we end up taking the data, we show the data, and it makes us look like a fool. At the end of the data, we back down again. So we want to say, well, put everybody in the same category. Are you all considering that? You know, we got to be ready to talk as a team Friday.
Yeah. And I would just encourage us to look at our benchmark data that I share with you all for the second quarter, because for our elementary students, we have seen some progress in students moving into tier 1. But again, that is not a state level assessment.
And that's what I'm saying. So we have to have something, because we don't have any measuring to say with the new way of teaching and learning that we've done, we can't talk about it. I can't talk about it. And that makes me very scary, because we have kids that are going to be promoted. And what are we going to do with them when they get there? We are already provisional mathematics. We have problems in mathematics. We have problems in other science areas. And so how are we going to do this?
Now, I will say this, and we can actually do a presentation on this. Dr. Lane, the state superintendent, shared with all superintendents today, they are going to have a remote testing option this year. If you recall, we stood before you all when we presented and said, we will have to bring every single student back into the building to test. That has now changed. And now they are saying we can offer a remote option, but the remote option will look different than the face-to-face option. So again, it's not going to be apples to apples. So we're going to dig into that, because we just heard about the remote option today.
Now that's nice to know, but still,
I agree.
When I went out here to get signatures, I asked that we have an electronic signature. And the two people, our delegate and our senator, both said we couldn't do that. I need to go to the city council. But when other people ran, we have electronic signal here. So then equity and inequality is still happening, and we got to stand up for it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of inequities going on. I absolutely agree.
And we bring these people to Petersburg. They come in our churches. We vote for them. We rally for them. And the buck we getting at the end is nothing.
Ms. Wynn. Oh, I thought you had something. Oh, Mr. Pierce.
Just one last thing. I think we had, and I almost forgot it. We were supposed to have a presentation tonight from our PR person, because we had some discussion about rebranding, communication, and even some of the stuff that Mr. Lundy has alluded to, and some of the things that we've alluded to tonight. He can put that on the, really project that, so that people can actually see that we are doing what we're doing. We're not just closed in. We're not just settled in on it. We can allow some of these things to explode themselves. And school is getting ready to start back up. Staff is coming back into the buildings. Kids are getting ready to start back.
And it is ready, but we did move it to March 17th as well. So
correct.
That is on there as well.
Yeah. So well, it'd be good to see a presentation from our PR person. I haven't seen him in a while.
Too many numbers and data.
All right. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's it.
I need to review it again.
So I would like to make the motion to adjourn.
She said, Mr. Mal, you will get that one right, right? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Pierce, all in favor? Oh, this meeting is their turn.
Better be ready for these parents, I'm telling you.